Hi guys. Tonight we step into a world where your very breath turns white in the air, a frozen mist clinging to your beard or lips. You can feel the sharp sting of cold biting at your skin, making your bones ache as if the earth itself wants you gone. Snowdrifts rise higher than your shoulders, winds howl through valleys, and the night stretches endlessly across a glacial plain. You pull your furs tighter, because without warmth you probably won't survive this. Yet somehow, people did. Our ancestors, resourceful, stubborn, endlessly inventive, found ways to keep their fragile sparks of life burning, even as brutal winters tried to snuff them out. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop a comment with your location and your local time. I'd love to know where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, breathe slowly, and let the story wrap around you like a heavy blanket. You begin by following a faint glow in the distance, and there it is, the very first fire that your kind ever dared to touch. Picture yourself crouching low, watching flames curl upward, orange tongues flicking against the night, the crackle and pop of wood, the strange new warmth radiating into your palms. It feels almost alive. Archaeologists tell us that early humans first harnessed natural fires from lightning strikes or forest blazes, carefully carrying embers to caves. Imagine the risk of grasping a smouldering branch with nothing but trembling hands and hope. Yet once fire was coaxed into existence inside a cave or beneath a rock shelter, it became sacred, a center of life itself. The warmth is immediate, but so is the danger. Sparks can scorch skin, smoke can choke lungs, and flames may leap unpredictably. Historians still argue whether those first flames were tamed by sheer luck or by watching animals fleeing fire and learning from them. Some even suggest our ancestors may have deliberately fanned embers with dried grass earlier than scholars once believed. What's certain is that once the flame was captured, it became not only protection from cold, but also a shield from predators. You huddle near, listening to wolves snarl just beyond the glow. They don't dare cross that fiery boundary. Close your eyes for a moment. Hear the hiss of wet wood tossed onto hot coals. Smell the acrid bite of smoke curling into your hair. The shadows dance along cave walls, turning ordinary rocks into living figures. You realize that this warmth is more than physical, it is psychological. Fire tells you that you are not powerless against the darkness. You belong here, even in a frozen world. A quirky tidbit. In some places, people may have used burning piles of dried animal dung to keep fires alive. Imagine that smell, the pungent, earthy smoke filling your nostrils. Hardly pleasant, but survival often cares little for comfort. Some bands even smeared ash on their skin, not only to repel biting insects, but perhaps to feel closer to the flames they relied upon. You extend your hands, rough and blistered, toward the fire. The skin cracks, but the warmth soaks in, pulling life back into your fingers. You can almost hear your heartbeat slowing as your body accepts this reprieve. Yet you can't help but notice the limits. Step just a pace or two away, and the cold bites again. This fragile fire must be fed constantly. Too much wood and it suffocates, too little and it fades into embers. It becomes an eternal task, tending, feeding, guarding against the wind that wants to steal it away. Imagine trudging through snow with a smouldering stick wrapped in leaves, desperately carrying yesterday's flame into today. If the fire died, you faced death. That urgency wove fire into ritual. Did your ancestors whisper to it? Did they treat it as a living being, demanding respect? Some modern hunter-gatherer groups still speak of fire as kin, not tool. Perhaps the same was true in the Ice Age. Yet even with fire crackling, the night was long. Children cried, elders shivered, and every gust of wind threatened to scatter sparks. Still, you sit there, wrapped in the glow, marveling at how this simple element changed everything. You've crossed a threshold without fire. You are just another shivering animal. With it, you have a weapon against the very season that seeks to erase you. And so, the first sparks of warmth are not just flames, they are hope embodied. They are the thin line between perishing in the snow and living long enough to see morning. You watch the firelight dance across your companions' faces, their eyes wide with both fear and awe. Somewhere deep inside, you sense the birth of a new chapter of humankind, the chapter that begins with fire and never truly ends. You sit by the glowing embers, listening to the faint crackle as the flames settle into a rhythm, their light licking the rough walls of the cave. The fire keeps you alive, yes, but you quickly realize that warmth must travel with you, not just remain in one spot. When you leave the blaze to hunt or gather, your body quivers, teeth chatter, and fingers go stiff as branches. You need something that can shield you against the wind when you're away from the fire's glow. That's when you notice the animal lying at your feet, the one felled earlier in the day. Its hide is thick, its fur dense, and as you press your cold hands against it, you feel the lingering warmth it once carried. You tug the skin across your shoulders, and suddenly, you are not quite so fragile. It's here, in this frozen breath of time, that humans become tailors. Not tailors as we know them, with fine scissors and delicate fabrics, but crude innovators wielding sharp stones and splinters of bone. The earliest clothing wasn't stitched so much as draped entire hides thrown over shoulders like blankets. Imagine trudging through the snow with a reindeer skin wrapped around you, the fur brushing against your cheek, the smell pungent and musky, but the insulation undeniable. You tie it with sinew, tough and wiry, scavenged from the very animal's insides. In these raw materials, every part of the creature has a purpose. Nothing is wasted. Even the parts you might turn your nose at become survival tools. Archaeological evidence shows that as far back as 170,000 years ago, early humans were already using scraping tools to prepare hides. The process was laborious. First, you stripped the skin of its flesh. Then you stretched it, smoked it, pounded it with stones, sometimes even chewed it to soften the fibers. The result was crude leather, flexible enough to wrap, tough enough to shield from wind. Historians still debate whether clothing appeared purely for survival against cold climates or whether modesty and ritual also played a role. Was a strip of hide tied around the waist practical warmth, or the very first fashion statement? As you picture yourself in this ancient scene, you can feel the bite of the cold lessen as layers of hide surround you. But survival clothing was never elegant. Picture the seams, if they could be called that at all. Stitched with bone needles, thick as a twig, leaving gaps that whistled with cold air. A quirky tidbit: some groups may have used fish bones sharpened to fine points as needles, threading animal sinew through holes punched into hide. The thread? Twisted gut fibers, surprisingly strong and flexible. It sounds crude, but imagine being snug in a tunic stitched together with the very intestines of the deer you just ate. Your movements, though, are clumsy. Early garments were stiff, not supple like modern jackets. The smell lingered, half smoke, half musk, a reminder that these clothes were never far from their animal origins. And yet, as you trudge across icy ridges, those awkward pelts keep you alive. You see your breath fogging in the air, feel the snow crunch beneath your wrapped feet, and realize this second layer of warmth, this portable fire, makes survival possible away from the hearth. You can hear the swish of fur brushing together as you walk, the sound like whispers against the frozen silence. Children are bundled in smaller hides, often carried against their mothers' bodies, sharing warmth skin to skin beneath layers of fur. A baby's cry pierces the air, muffled by the cocoon of animal skin, but safe nonetheless. Imagine the rhythm of footsteps through snow, the steady squeak and crunch, while everybody in the group moves forward, swaddled in the skins of the creatures that roam the plains. Yet clothing was more than a shield. For some, it was an identity. Decorative elements creep in early. You notice beads made of bone or shells strung along seams. Was it purely vanity or a way to signal belonging to a tribe? Some scholars argue these adornments carried spiritual weight, invoking animal spirits for protection. Historians still argue whether these embellishments were first introduced as a way of marking social status, or simply because humans, even in the harshest environments, couldn't resist making their tools a little more beautiful. You press your hands against your stitched cloak, marveling at how something so crude could be so effective. The cold no longer claws at your skin quite as fiercely. Your ears, wrapped in fur, no longer burn from the wind. You sense the beginnings of ingenuity that will, millennia later, lead to tailored garments, layered fabrics, and even heated jackets. But right now, in this ancient moment, the very act of scraping hide and piercing it with bone is revolutionary. The camp fills with the rhythmic sound of scraping. Each adult sits by the fire, stretching skins over wooden frames, pulling stone scrapers across hide, flakes falling like snow into the dirt. Smoke rises as hides are hung near the flames to dry, the acrid scent curling into your nostrils. You taste it on your tongue, smoky, bitter, but somehow reassuring. Every sound, every smell, every sensation is wrapped in the knowledge that clothing means warmth, and warmth means life. A quirky ritual emerges. Before a hunt, some may have stroked their cloaks, muttering words to the animal spirit of the fur. Did they believe wearing the hide of a wolf gave them the wolf's strength? Perhaps. Did they think a deer pelt might draw herds closer? Maybe. You don't know, but you sense reverence in the way they handle skins, never carelessly, always with purpose. Now picture yourself in a blizzard. The fire is far behind, and snowflakes pelt your cheeks like tiny knives. Your cloak whips in the wind, heavy and damp, but still it shields your core. Without it, your fingers would stiffen, your lips would blue, and your heartbeat would slow dangerously. Instead, you pull the hood tighter around your head, the fur bristling against your eyelashes, and keep walking. It's easy to underestimate how revolutionary clothing was. For countless species, survival meant adapting fur or fat naturally. Humans, nearly hairless compared to their animal neighbors, had to invent fur for themselves. In this moment, you realize you are not merely a creature of flesh but of mind, shaping the world to suit your needs. It is the first whisper of technology. And though clumsy, though awkward, it carries you through winter's jaws. Even now your cloak rustles, smelling faintly of the hunt, stitched clumsily yet tightly enough to trap your body heat. You are encased in warmth that is not your own but borrowed, repurposed, honored. And as the wind rattles against your back, you feel grateful for every stitch, every scrape, every drop of sweat that went into turning an animal's life into your survival. This is no mere garment. It is your shield, your blanket, your second skin. Without it, you would freeze. With it, you live another day. You shuffle deeper into the cave, the fur cloak wrapped around your shoulders, heavy but reassuring. Outside, the blizzard howls like a wild animal determined to claw through stone. But inside, shadows flicker across the walls, and the air, though smoky, holds the fragile promise of warmth. Tonight, survival isn't about the fire alone, nor the hides that cling to your skin. It's about bodies pressed close together, the collective warmth of your companions forming a living wall against the cold. You ease yourself down onto the rocky floor, feeling the sharp edges through layers of pelts. Your back leans against the rough limestone, cold seeping through but dulled by the fire's glow. Around you, others gather in a loose circle. Their faces are half lit, half swallowed in shadow, eyes blinking slowly, weary from the day's hunt. Then one by one, they edge closer, shoulders touching, legs overlapping, breath mingling in the air, until the entire group becomes a single pulsing mass of warmth. You exhale, and the person beside you inhales, sharing not just air but comfort. The science is simple enough. Body heat radiates, each person contributing their small spark to the communal fire. Alone, you would shiver endlessly, teeth chattering like stones knocking together. Together, your group becomes a furnace. This practice of huddling is hardly unique to humans. You've seen birds fluff their feathers and nest close, and penguins far in the frozen southern reaches still perform their communal huddles today. But for early humans, huddling wasn't just convenience. It was ritual. It was survival. Historians still debate whether cave living was more about warmth or safety. Some argue caves were chosen for protection from predators and weather alike. Others believe they were temporary, seasonal shelters, used only when the cold turned unbearable. But inside these stone wombs, there's no denying the psychological effect. You feel safer when surrounded by others. Your breathing slows. Your fear of the dark fades, replaced by the gentle rise and fall of the chest pressed against your shoulder. A quirky tidbit. Some archaeologists speculate that groups even arrange themselves strategically, with the youngest and weakest pressed into the center of the huddle, cocooned by the stronger adults. Imagine that, a circle of bodies forming not just warmth but protection, like rings of a living tree sheltering its tender core. Babies would be wrapped in multiple hides, held skin to skin against a parent's chest, their cries muffled by the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. In this way, warmth became more than physical, it was emotional, a reassurance of belonging. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself wedged between companions, hearing the soft rustle of fur, the occasional grunt as someone shifts, the whispered sighs of exhausted hunters finally surrendering to sleep. The cave air is thick with smoke and musk, a mingling of sweat, damp hide and charred wood. Not pleasant, no, but strangely comforting. In the silence between gusts of wind, you notice the sound of breathing filling the cave, a chorus of inhales and exhales weaving together like a lullaby. But it isn't always idyllic. Space is cramped. Stones dig into your ribs, and the fire's smoke irritates your eyes. One person coughs, another sneezes. Illness spreads quickly in such tight quarters. Yet the alternative, sleeping alone, separated from the group, means risking frostbite, predators, or worse. The discomfort is bearable compared to the finality of the cold. You imagine children, restless in their sleep, kicking free of their hides. A mother instinctively tucks them back in, pulling them close beneath her arm. Elderly members of the group, weaker and slower, are cushioned between younger bodies, their frail warmth preserved by those who still have strength. In this way, survival becomes collective. There is no I in this frozen night, only we. There's a subtle intimacy to this closeness. You feel another's heartbeat against your arm, another's hair brushing against your cheek. These are not lovers' touches, but survival touches, practical, necessary, and deeply human. You sense that this contact forms bonds, weaving social threads as strong as sinew. Maybe tomorrow, when food is scarce, the person pressed against your side tonight will share their last scrap with you, because warmth once passed between you. Survival is physical, yes, but also relational. Historians still argue whether caves were continuously occupied or merely seasonal, but the evidence of charred bones, soot-stained ceilings, and worn stone floors suggests long stretches of habitation. You wonder how many nights like this were endured, how many winters passed in smoky caves, each night blending into the next, each body pressed against another for warmth. Now consider this odd thought. Huddling wasn't just for humans. Wolves still wild then. Not yet dogs sometimes stalked the edges of human camps. Perhaps, in the most desperate winters, a brave wolf pressed close enough to share warmth, foreshadowing the bond between species that would one day become companionship. It's a fanciful image, but not entirely impossible. Archaeological traces suggest wolves and humans crossed paths long before domestication took hold. Imagine the shared heat of fur and flesh, predator and prey edging toward uneasy alliance under the same roof of stone. You reach down, running your fingers across the rocky floor, gritty with ash and dirt. Every detail of this environment is etched into your senses. The acrid smoke that makes your eyes water, the damp furs beneath you that carry the smell of earth and sweat, the echo of wind battering the cave's mouth like a distant drum, and always the quiet murmur of breathing, dozens of lungs feeding the atmosphere with warmth, each exhale rising like a thin mist into the smoky air. The huddle is more than necessity, it becomes ritual. Perhaps before sleep, someone mutters words of gratitude to the fire, to the hides, to the warmth of neighbors pressed close. You can picture a leader or elder speaking softly, reminding the group of ancestors who survived winters even harsher than this one. A child, frightened by the darkness, listens and feels less alone, reassured by the solid wall of bodies around them. A quirky habit emerges in your imagination. Maybe some individuals preferred the outside edge of the huddle, close to the fire, trading body heat for flames' warmth. Others, weary of smoke, chose the center, where the air was stiller and warmth more consistent. It's a delicate balance, like a living organism arranging itself nightly, adjusting as needed to survive. And so, you lie there, not as an individual, but as part of a greater whole. Every shuffle, every sigh, every shared breath becomes part of the rhythm of survival. You realize that warmth is not just a matter of fire and fur, it is communal. It is born of connection, of trust, of the willingness to press against another and share what little you have. Without this closeness, the cold would claim you. With it, you endure, night after night until the thaw comes. In the glow of the dying fire, you close your eyes, wrapped in the warmth of others. The storm outside still rages, but within this cave, you are cocooned in human ingenuity and human closeness. You drift, not into death but into sleep, carried by the soft chorus of shared survival. The night passes in smoky silence, bodies curled together like nesting birds, until the pale light of dawn filters weakly through the cave's mouth. You stir, stiff from stone and fur, your breath visible as you exhale into the chill. The fire has burned low, leaving behind a soft glow of embers. You reach for a stick and poke at them, coaxing the faintest spark. But even as you fan the heat, you realize something crucial. Fire is fragile. It must be nurtured, transported, even birthed anew. And this is where bones and stones enter the story, the earliest tools for creating fire, the ancestors of every lighter, every match, every stove you have today. You step outside into a world crusted with frost, snow crunching beneath your hide-wrapped feet. In your hand, you clutch a piece of flint, its edge sharp enough to slice skin. Another stone lies beside you, duller but harder iron pyrite, perhaps. You strike them together, and for the first time you see it, a tiny spray of sparks. It's nothing at first, fleeting glimmers swallowed by the wind. But if you lean closer, strike again, and catch the sparks on a nest of dry grass or powdered fungus, they flare tiny stars birthing into flame. Archaeological discoveries suggest that humans had mastered this process tens of thousands of years ago. Charred remains of tinder fungus and fragments of flint nodules have been found in ancient sites, silent proof of this ingenuity. To picture it, imagine crouched figures hammering stone against stone with aching persistence, their faces set with determination, their survival hinging on a single ember. Fire was no longer only borrowed from nature. It could be summoned with skill. That was a leap equal to taming a wild beast. Curiously enough, not every group may have used flint. Some evidence hints that bones, especially marrow-filled ones, played their part. Hunters split open bones not only to suck out the rich fat but also to use the hollow shards as blowtubes, directing air onto smouldering tinder. Picture yourself on hands and knees, lips pressed to bone, exhaling until a faint orange glow flares brighter. Such improvisation meant that every fragment of the animal served more than one purpose: food, tool, and even fire helper. There is still disagreement among specialists about how widespread these fire-starting methods were. Did every band of humans master the trick of sparks? Or were some still at the mercy of scavenging natural fires for millennia longer? The timeline remains hazy, a puzzle scattered across continents. What's certain is that once the trick was known, it spread slowly, but inevitably like the flames themselves. Let your senses linger here for a moment. Hear the sharp clack of stone on stone, metallic and echoing against frozen cliffs. Smell the acrid whiff of singed grass as sparks finally take hold. Feel the trembling excitement as a hunter's hands cradle a newborn flame, shielding it against the cruel wind. It is fragile, but alive, and now it is yours. Of course, the process wasn't without oddities. Some groups likely used marrow grease smeared onto tinder to make it catch more easily. Imagine the faintly sweet, fatty smell rising as grass ignites, a scent that mixes strangely with smoke and sweat. Others may have discovered that certain dried mushrooms like tinder fungus burned slowly, carrying a glowing ember for hours. This quirky trick meant fire could travel miles, glowing softly in a pouch of hide even as the tribe moved across icy plains. Picture someone reaching into their bag mid-journey, finding not just food or tools but a living ember, warm and ready to be coaxed into flame. Fire tools themselves became treasured objects. A sharp-edged flint was more than a rock. It was survival in your palm. Families passed them down, chipping them sharper, wrapping them in strips of leather for safekeeping. In the hush of a winter night, someone might even decorate their flint, carving small marks into it, a silent recognition that this stone was not just useful but sacred. Without it, your clan might freeze. With it, you could banish the dark. Yet fire-making wasn't always successful. Imagine crouching in the snow, striking flint over and over while your fingers go numb, each spark fizzling uselessly. The frustration builds, stomachs rumble, and the cold presses in like a predator. In such moments, prayers or charms may have been whispered words offered to unseen powers to coax the flame to life. It is not hard to picture an elder muttering over the tinder, voice steady, as if calling to a stubborn spirit. Whether you call it ritual or simple persistence, the outcome was the same. A fragile flame that meant the difference between death and survival. Some anthropologists believe this mastery of portable fire was one of the great turning points in human evolution. No longer chained to caves with lingering embers, bands could roam farther, settle where wood was sparse, or even cross icy landscapes where warmth had to be conjured from nothing. Fire kits became as essential as spears. Wherever humans went, sparks followed. Now, let's imagine the sensory world of carrying such tools. You keep a small leather pouch tied at your waist. Inside lies flint, a piece of pyrite, a bundle of dried moss. Each step makes them jostle faintly, a soft rattle against your hip. It's not wealth in gold or jewels, it's wealth in survival. When you stop to rest, you crouch low, open the pouch, and your fingers brush those precious items. You feel the edges of flint, cool and sharp, like reassurance carved into stone. But here's something strange. Not every ember was used simply for warmth. In certain places, evidence suggests that glowing coals were carried to light torches for exploring deep caves. Imagine wandering into the belly of the earth, a flickering torch in hand, the flame hissing and smoking as it licks against limestone. In those tunnels, fire was not just heat, it was sight itself. Without it, total darkness would swallow you whole. With it, you could leave marks on walls, bison and mammoths sketched in flickering red light. Your mind drifts to a winter evening when the tribe gathers to make fire together. Children watch with wide eyes as sparks catch, their laughter turning into gasps as flame blooms from tinder. For them, it must have felt like magic, pure and impossible. For you, it is skill, earned through countless failures and blisters. Yet even knowing the trick, you can't shake the awe. The power to summon fire at will is not something you ever take for granted. Consider too the way fire-making shaped daily rhythm. No longer did you need to guard yesterday's coals with such desperation. If they went out, you could try again. Yet coals were still prized like sleeping dragons glowing beneath ash, ready to roar back into life with a puff of breath. So you balance both, keeping embers alive when you can, striking sparks when you must. Each method reinforces the other, weaving a net of survival against the endless cold. As night falls once more, You sit by the fire you've coaxed from stone and grass, its flames dancing higher than the cave's mouth. Outside, snow continues to fall, a steady hush across the landscape. But inside, you stretch your hands toward the blaze, knowing this warmth isn't borrowed from a lightning strike or stolen from a forest fire. It is yours, made with tools, with patience, with the sheer stubborn will to live. You lean back, watching the sparks rise into the cave's dark ceiling like stars in a private sky. And you realize something simple but profound. With flint, with tinder, with the bones and stones of the earth, you have become more than a survivor. You have become a maker of fire, a creature capable of creating warmth where none existed, and that is power enough to face even the most merciless winter. The fire sputters and roars in the cave's heart, and you feel grateful for its warmth, but gratitude soon mingles with discomfort. The air is thick, heavy, laced with smoke that scratches your throat. Your eyes water, blinking against the haze. The heat and the cold wrestle constantly in this small stone chamber. One moment you are too close, cheeks stung red by the flames. The next you edge back and the chill claws at your spine. Balance is everything, and balance is difficult to keep. You live not only with warmth, but with the burden of smoke. As you sit there, coughing softly into your furs, you realize this is one of the oldest trade-offs in human history. Stay near the fire and breathe in acrid air, or move away and risk the bite of frost. Archaeologists examining soot-blackened cave ceilings have confirmed that smoke filled these shelters season after season, leaving layers of black residue that endure thousands of years later. That blackened stone is testimony. Fire kept you alive, but it also choked you slowly. You listen to the crackling, but also to the wheeze of someone older nearby. A child coughs in their sleep, their tiny chest rattling against the thick hide swaddling them. Smoke curls upward in graceful spirals, beautiful to watch, painful to inhale. And you wonder, did your ancestors adapt their bodies slowly to tolerate it? Or did they simply endure, coughing through each winter until spring finally arrived? Specialists remain uncertain, divided on how ancient people managed smoke exposure without permanent harm. And yet the people weren't helpless. They tinkered, experimented. Some groups learned to build simple vents, holes, or cracks at the cave's mouth that allowed smoke to drift outward while still keeping most of the warmth in. Others shifted fires deeper or closer to the entrance depending on wind direction. Imagine the nightly ritual. Someone crouches, tests the air, watches how smoke curls, then shifts the fire pit by a few feet. It was crude trial and error, but it meant easier breathing. One odd and rather fascinating habit shows up in some archaeological speculation. Ashes themselves were sprinkled onto damp floor areas to keep the ground dry and reduce slipping. It wasn't just waste, it became part of the living space. Ash smeared on skin also offered a protective layer, insulating against bugs, or even serving as a primitive deodorant. You picture yourself rubbing grey ash over your arms, coughing as you do, yet oddly proud to find use for every byproduct of your smoky shelter. There's a strange rhythm to living in smoke. Your nose becomes numb to the constant sting, your eyes always damp. When you step outside into the biting cold, the air feels almost sweet in your lungs, clean and sharp as ice water. You inhale deeply, savoring it, but within minutes the cold gnaws at your bones again, and you hurry back into the smoky warmth. Life becomes a constant negotiation between poisoned comfort and pure but deadly chill. Inside, you notice fire placement isn't random. The tribe gathers around a central hearth, everyone positioned so that warmth is shared equally. Children closest, adults further out, hunters and elders taking places depending on their needs. The smoke moves upward, clinging to the ceiling, a grey fog through which shadows of stalactites loom like ghostly teeth. By the end of a long winter, the cave's roof drips black resin from years of soot, a silent diary of human endurance. Scholars often puzzle over the impact this had on health. Did repeated winters of inhaled smoke shorten lives, weaken lungs, or foster resistance? The truth remains elusive. What we do know is that people lived long enough to pass on knowledge, to teach fire-making, to raise children who would survive the next winter. That resilience, even amid constant irritation, is remarkable. Now close your eyes for a moment and imagine the sensory symphony of such a night. The warmth of flames licking your skin, almost too hot, the prickle of smoke in your nostrils, the constant itch in your throat, the occasional sting of sparks landing on your arm, forcing you to swat quickly, then the soundscape, the fire's low roar, the sighs and coughs of your companions, the faint whistling of wind outside. It's uncomfortable, but it's life. Still, even discomfort breeds ingenuity. At some point, people began shaping simple chimneys with stacked stones, guiding smoke toward natural cracks in the cave. Others hollowed pits in the ground so that the fire sat slightly below floor level, trapping heavier smoke down low and sparing the air above. Were these deliberate inventions or accidents stumbled upon while experimenting with fire placement? Experts remain divided, but the adaptations worked well enough to keep humans alive through centuries of winters. A curious twist appears when you consider ritual again. In some traditions, smoke wasn't just a nuisance, it carried meaning. Perhaps it was seen as a bridge to the spirit world, the breath of ancestors lingering in the air. You can picture an elder waving a hand through the haze, muttering as if interpreting messages written in grey curls. Even discomfort could become symbolic, transformed into something bearable when framed as sacred. You lean closer to the hearth, watching the flames twist and spit. Sparks leap upward, vanishing into the smoky haze, and you think of how fragile the balance always is. Too much wood, and smoke overwhelms everyone. Too little, and warmth fades. Life in the cave is constant calibration, an endless attempt to hold the line between freezing to death and choking in fumes. Imagine leaving the cave for a hunt on a bitter day, trudging through thigh-deep snow, lungs filled with crisp air. When you return, you push aside the hide at the entrance and step into the familiar cloud of smoke. It burns your throat at first, then oddly comforts you, because you know it means fire is still alive inside. That smell, sharp and sooty, becomes the very fragrance of survival. As the night wears on, you curl back into your furs, breathing shallowly to avoid coughing, and you think, yes, this is unpleasant, but it is also a miracle. To live in a smoky cave is far better than to lie frozen in the open. You close your eyes, lulled by the pop of firewood and the collective breathing of your clan, and you surrender to sleep within this smoky cocoon, one more night conquered, one more winter endured. You wake to the thin grey light of a new day, coughing softly as the cave exhales last night's smoke. The air is damp and sharp, the kind that makes your nostrils sting. For now, the fire still glows faintly, but everyone knows embers are fickle. Sometimes the cold wins, sometimes the fire dies, and when that happens, you cannot simply wait for lightning to strike again. You must move. Picture yourself standing at the cave's mouth, staring across a landscape blanketed in endless white. The wind has quieted, but the horizon feels vast and merciless. You pull your fur cloak tighter, glance at your companions, and begin walking south. Not blindly, but with purpose. For survival, you must follow the animals. Most scholars agree that human groups were highly mobile during the Ice Age, tracking herds of reindeer, mammoths, and bison that in turn followed the shifting edge of grasslands. These animals didn't just provide food, they were walking stores of warmth, skins for clothing, fat for burning, sinews for thread. Without them, you would starve and freeze, so you walk where they walk. But mobility itself becomes a strategy against the cold. Why endure the harshest grip of winter if a valley farther down might be milder? Why suffer in frozen mountains if plains just south of here hold gentler winds? Anthropologists continue to debate how deliberate these migrations were, whether bands had seasonal patterns carefully mapped, or whether they simply wandered until they stumbled into warmer lands. What's clear is that movement became as essential as fire itself. Imagine trudging for days, snow crunching beneath your makeshift boots stuffed with dry grass. The air cuts at your cheeks, reddens your lips. But then you crest a ridge and look down at a valley where snow is thinner, where water trickles in a half-frozen stream. There, reindeer huddle, their breath rising in clouds. That sight fills you with hope. It means not just food but fuel, clothing, even warmth from their very presence. Unusual details surface from archaeological finds. Sometimes, entire families packed up shelters made from mammoth bones and hides, dismantling and carrying them across icy terrain. Think of the weight, huge curved tusks slung across shoulders, hide sheets rolled and tied with sinew. The journey was brutal, but so was staying put. Portability was life. Even embers were portable. A glowing chunk of charcoal tucked in a container of ash, carried carefully so the next camp could be lit without starting from scratch. That ember was a family treasure, as important as any tool. You can hear the rhythm of migration, footsteps muffled in snow, sleds creaking under the pull of dogs, the soft whimper of children bundled tightly against their mothers' chests. Every sound blends into a strange song of survival. At night, the tribe halts, and men scrape clear a patch of frozen ground while women gather brushwood. The fire is lit again, meals are cooked, stories are told. Then, by morning, the group moves once more. One curious practice that may have existed, following animal tracks not only for food but as natural trails through snowdrifts. Large herds trampled paths across otherwise impassable terrain, and humans were quick to exploit these frozen highways. You step into the impressions left by a mammoth's massive feet, feeling how the compacted snow supports your weight more easily. The herd guides you south, unknowingly leading your people to survival. Experts disagree on whether these migrations were short distances or epic journeys spanning hundreds of miles. Some evidence points to relatively small shifts moving down valleys, from highlands to lowlands. Others propose larger arcs, entire regions traversed in search of gentler winters. Either way, you imagine the relief of entering a sheltered valley after weeks of exposure. The air feels softer here, the wind less cruel. For a moment, you even dare to smile. Yet migration was not without cost. The elderly slowed the group, children grew restless, and hunger gnawed at everyone's patience. Still, the alternative, staying in one place as the cold deepened, was unthinkable. So the group moved as one organism, bound by necessity, guided by instinct, trusting in the ancient pull of following animals and rivers. There's something hypnotic about the rhythm of walking through snow, step after step, breath puffing white into the air. Your legs ache, your shoulders burn beneath the weight of hides and tools. But ahead, there is always the promise of something better. You imagine hearing the faint rumble of reindeer hooves in the distance, each sound a drumbeat urging you forward. At night, as fires burn in temporary camps, you reflect on how mobility itself warms you. The act of walking keeps blood flowing, keeps limbs from stiffening. To sit too long in the cold is to risk stillness turning to frostbite. So even when weary, you press forward, step after step. The very act of migration becomes its own survival tool. And then there is the mental warmth of movement, the comfort of hope. To sit trapped in a frozen valley with dwindling firewood would sap your spirit as much as your body. To walk, however harsh, is to believe tomorrow might be kinder. That belief alone can carry you through biting winds. Picture the sight of your people arriving in a valley where snow lies thinner, where animals graze on frozen grass, where caves dot the cliffsides. Relief spreads through the group like fire catching on dry brush. You hear laughter for the first time in weeks, soft but real. Children chase one another clumsily in their fur wrappings, their cheeks pink, their breath clouding in playful bursts. Even the elders smile, their faces wrinkled but lighter. Migration, then, is more than movement. It is strategy, ritual, and hope combined. Without it, humans would have been prisoners of the ice. With it, they became wanderers who carried their warmth across continents. It is no exaggeration to say that every step south, every valley entered, every herd followed, planted the seeds of humanity's future expansion. You feel it in your own tired legs. This is not just escape from cold. This is the beginning of human migration stories that will one day circle the globe. You settle at last in the new valley, lighting a fire from your carefully protected ember, watching sparks leap into life. Around you, the group exhales in relief. The night is still cold, the snow still falls, but here the wind is gentler, the shelter stronger, the hunt closer. You tuck yourself into your furs, feeling the warmth of both fire and movement still coursing through your body, and you understand, to survive winter is not to stay put, but to move, to follow, to trust that somewhere, beyond the next ridge, warmth still waits. You wake again to the crackle of fire, but this time your gaze drifts downward to something subtle, almost hidden beneath the glowing logs. Ashes, charcoal, little fragments of black and grey that seem insignificant, yet they are treasures. You stir them gently with a stick and watch as faint orange glimmers pulse like sleeping hearts. This is the tribe's secret weapon. Not flame itself, but embers that linger, quietly smouldering long after the night has passed. It's widely accepted among archaeologists that ancient people relied on carrying these embers to ensure continuity of fire. Sparks could be fickle, striking flint in a snowstorm often failed, but a coal wrapped in ash or moss might burn slowly for hours. Imagine crouching over yesterday's hearth, carefully burying a glowing coal inside a pouch of dried grass, wrapping it tight and tying it to your belt before setting out on a long trek. That tiny glow was your insurance policy, your guarantee against freezing. You can almost feel it in your hands now, a bundle warm to the touch, faintly smoking, its heat radiating through hide wrappings. You guard it jealously. If it dies, tonight's camp will be cold, food will remain raw, and morale will sink like a stone. Protecting an ember becomes as important as protecting a child. Some researchers still puzzle over how far embers could truly be carried. Could they survive a day's march across icy plains? Or were they only useful for short distances, requiring constant nursing? The evidence is scattered, and the answer remains uncertain. But you can picture the scene. A hunter pausing mid-journey, crouching in the snow to blow gently into his pouch, coaxing the ember to glow brighter before sealing it again. His breath turns to frost in the air, but the coal inside lives on, like a heartbeat that must never stop. And here lies a curious little detail. Ash itself acts as insulation. Cover a coal in fine grey powder, and it slows the burn, trapping the heat inside. So what might look like waste, the dusty residue left after fire, was actually precious. You sprinkle ash carefully over your ember bundle, the grey dust clinging to your fingers, and suddenly that tiny glow lasts longer. A strange paradox. The death of yesterday's fire ensures the birth of tomorrow's. There is something almost sacred about these glowing fragments. Imagine elders teaching children how to handle them, warning sternly never to drop, never to waste, never to forget. Perhaps they told stories of people who lost their ember and paid dearly, frost taking their fingers or their lives. Survival wasn't only about courage or strength, it was about memory, diligence, and care. Now close your eyes and picture a caravan of weary figures trudging through snow. Each person bears a bundle. Some carry food, others hides, one or two entrusted with fire. That role is a burden and an honor, a reminder that warmth itself can be passed hand to hand like a living inheritance. Archaeological sites sometimes reveal fire pits layered with both charcoal and fresh wood, suggesting deliberate preservation of coals. You imagine someone rising early, kneeling at the hearth, pushing yesterday's half-burned logs together, feeding them with new kindling, and watching as smoke curls upward. The fire never truly dies, it only rests. That practice feels familiar even now when you bank a campfire before bed so it will spark alive with morning's breath. There's also an odd bit of folklore hinted at in some traditions, carrying a coal inside a hollowed-out horn or skull fragment. Picture that a glowing ember resting in the cavity of bone, like a tiny spirit sheltered in death's vessel. The symbolism would have been powerful, even eerie. Life's flame cradled in the husk of mortality. Was it practical or ritual? Nobody knows, but the image lingers, strange and unforgettable. Experts continue to debate whether the reliance on ember carrying slowed down human migrations or actually made them possible. Did groups travel shorter distances to ensure their embers survived? Or did the skill of coaxing new flame from flint make them bold enough to wander farther? You consider both possibilities as you kneel by your bundle, fingers trembling, breath steady, coaxing life from the faint glow hidden within. The sensory experience of tending embers is vivid. You lift the pouch to your face, smell the faint sweetness of charred wood mixed with hide. You blow gently, hearing the faint hiss as oxygen feeds the coal, feeling warmth pulse against your lips. Then, with a sudden flare, the glow brightens, red veins spreading across the black surface. Relief washes over you. Fire is alive again. And there is a deeper layer here too, psychology. To know that warmth is portable, that you can carry it with you, changes the way you face winter. It transforms fire from a temporary blessing into a constant companion. Like a heartbeat or a shadow, it follows wherever you go. You are no longer at the mercy of chance lightning or wildfires, you are in command. That sense of control, however fragile, must have given your ancestors confidence to push farther into hostile lands. Imagine the tribe stopping at dusk after a long march. The ember is unwrapped with ceremony. Children gather close, eyes wide, waiting to see whether the glow still lives. When it does, when a puff of breath transforms coal into flame, cheers rise. It is not just fire, it is proof of continuity, proof that the journey is guided by an unbroken thread of warmth. But sometimes, of course, embers fail. Perhaps the pouch grows damp, snow melts inside, or wind snuffs the glow. In those moments, desperation sets in. You see figures striking flint furiously, fingers numb, sparks flying uselessly into wet grass. Tension builds, hope fades, and when flame finally catches again, the relief is indescribable. The group claps shoulders, laughs shakily, exhales together. It is a victory as grand as any hunt. Carrying embers also tied humans to cycles of care. You couldn't simply ignore them. They demanded attention. Someone always had to guard the ember, nurse it, feed it, breathe into it. In that sense, fire became a living thing, a dependent member of the tribe. You didn't just use fire, you raised it. Perhaps that is why so many myths later personified flame as a spirit or deity. The connection was intimate, born of endless nights spent keeping coals alive. You lie back against your furs now, listening to the steady crackle of the fire rekindled from a coal carried all day. Outside, the wind wails across frozen ridges, but inside, you bask in warmth that has traveled with you like an old friend. The air smells of smoke and char. Your skin tingles with heat. Your mind drifts towards sleep. Tomorrow, another ember will be tucked away, another coal hidden in ash, another thread of fire tied to your people's survival. And through these tiny fragments, humanity continues its quiet defiance of winter's grip, carrying life in the palm of its hand, never letting the cold snuff it out completely. The ember bundle smoulders faintly as you drift into uneasy sleep, but by morning the camp must do more than survive. It must create shelter strong enough to hold against the season's cruelty. Fire and hides will only go so far. You need walls. You need a roof. You need something that doesn't move when the storm howls and snow piles up high enough to swallow a man whole. And so, your eyes lift toward the bones scattered across the hunting grounds, massive, pale arcs half buried in frost. Mammoth bones. Archaeological digs across Eurasia have uncovered extraordinary evidence. Entire huts constructed from mammoth skeletons, dating back nearly 15,000 years. Picture it now: you kneel in the snow, gripping a massive curved tusk taller than yourself, dragging it slowly into place with the help of others. The weight is staggering, but the shape is perfect, a natural arch against which hides can be draped. Skulls, ribs, femurs, all repurposed into the frame of a winter home. It's not just shelter, it's architecture born of necessity. You hear the sound of bones clattering together as the framework rises, a grim symphony of death turned into life. The hides come next, thick and heavy, stitched into vast sheets. They're stretched across the frame, tied with sinew, pegged down with stones. As the wind rattles against them, you hear only a muffled hiss inside, a welcome buffer against the storm outside. For the first time in weeks, you breathe without your lungs aching from icy drafts. Most researchers agree these huts were likely seasonal dwellings, used by nomadic bands when caves were scarce or herds moved onto open plains. Excavations show hearths inside, storage pits dug into the frozen earth, and even scattered beads and carvings, proof that people didn't just sleep here. They lived here, laughed here, raised children here. These shelters were villages in miniature, fleeting but vital. Yet debate lingers among specialists. Were these bone huts everyday structures, or reserved for only the harshest winters? Some believe they were emergency shelters, built when ice gripped the land too fiercely for cave life. Others argue they were central to nomadic life, carefully dismantled and rebuilt along migration routes. The truth is buried in snow, still waiting for clearer answers. Now pause for a moment. Close your eyes and imagine entering such a hut. The air inside is warmer, still smoky but less biting than outside. The fire pit glows in the center, its heat reflected back by bone walls. Shadows leap across curved tusks, giving the eerie impression that giants guard your shelter. Children curl on furs near the fire, giggling softly, while hunters rest their weary legs, shoulders finally free from the weight of wind. The space feels temporary, yes, but also astonishingly secure compared to the open plain. One odd yet ingenious detail. Evidence suggests that hides may have been layered with turf, snow, or even ice to create insulation. Imagine patting snow into the seams of your shelter, using the very substance of winter as a shield against its own cold. It sounds contradictory, but snow, when packed, traps air and becomes an excellent insulator. You might chuckle at the thought. The cold itself saves you from the cold. The sensory world of such a hut is vivid. The thick musk of hides mixes with the faint mineral tang of bones. The crack of wood in the hearth echoes softly within enclosed walls, muffled by snow outside. Your fingers brush against the curved surface of a tusk, polished smooth by countless touches, and you feel both awe and gratitude for the creature that gave its remains to your survival. There's an emotional weight here too. To build with mammoth bones is to acknowledge death's gift. Perhaps rituals were performed during construction chants to honor the animal, gestures to ensure its spirit did not resent being turned into walls. Some anthropologists suggest these huts were not just practical but spiritual spaces, bone and hide infused with reverence. Whether or not this is true, you can almost sense the hush as your companions pause, hands on tusks, whispering thanks into the frozen air. Think of the effort. Days spent hunting, hours spent skinning, then more hours assembling bones heavy enough to break a man's back, all for a shelter that might last only a season before being abandoned. And yet, the payoff is enormous. Inside, the temperature climbs, bodies relax, sleep becomes less dangerous. That is the measure of human perseverance. Immense labor traded for a few months of survival. You look around at the finished hut and see signs of ingenuity everywhere. Stones line the hearth to retain heat. Entrances are kept low and narrow, forcing you to crouch as you enter so the warm air stays trapped inside. Storage pits hold dried meat and marrow bones, safely tucked below the frozen ground where spoilage slows. The hut hums with life, every corner designed not for beauty but for endurance. A quirky glimpse into daily life. Bones weren't just walls. Some were carved into musical instruments, flutes from bird bones, rattles from hollow fragments. Imagine the eerie sound of a flute echoing inside a mammoth bone hut, the notes mingling with the crackle of fire. Even in the depths of winter, your ancestors found room for song, for rhythm, for a flicker of joy. Scholars still dispute whether these huts were communal or family-based. Did one structure hold an entire band, or did each family build their own? The evidence points both ways, with some huts large enough for dozens, others small enough for a single hearth. The ambiguity is frustrating for academics, but fascinating for you, standing in the smoky glow of a bone shelter, wondering how many breaths once filled this space. Now imagine storm winds screaming across the plain, flinging snow in horizontal sheets. Outside, the landscape vanishes into a blur of white, but inside, you sit cross-legged on furs, safe. You press your hand against the wall, feel the solid curve of a mammoth rib, and realize you are cradled inside the skeleton of a giant. Death has become refuge. The winter rages, but you do not freeze. As sleep approaches, your senses linger on the soundscape, the crack of tusks settling in the cold, the faint whistle of wind slipping past seams, the rhythmic breathing of your companions. This hut is not permanent, but for now it is enough. You pull your furs tight, gaze at the sparks leaping toward the tusk ceiling, and let gratitude warm you as much as the fire. For in these walls of bone and hide lies proof that humans are not just survivors, but inventors able to turn death into life and cold into comfort. The bone hut holds against the wind, but as night deepens, the fire begins to gutter. The logs spit and collapse into glowing fragments, and though the warmth lingers, the light grows dim. You shift closer, wrapping your furs tighter, but notice a flicker of something strange. It is not just firewood that fuels the flame tonight. A faint, oily smell curls through the hut, sharper than burning wood, almost greasy on your tongue. Someone has dropped a lump of fat into a small stone lamp, and the flame hisses as it licks the oil. This, you realize, is another key to survival. Lamps and torches fed not by wood alone, but by the fat and marrow of animals. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age sites shows traces of carved stone bowls blackened with soot, their hollows once filled with rendered fat. Picture a rough, shallow basin chipped from limestone, a strand of moss or twisted fiber laid across it like a wick. Into that hollow, hunters poured melted marrow, thick and greasy, harvested from bones cracked open with stone hammers. Light blossomed from this concoction, steady and bright enough to see by. The glow painted the walls with dancing shadows, illuminating faces and furs in gold. You can imagine the moment. A hunter kneels, carefully scooping marrow from a split femur, holding it close to the fire until it liquefies. He pours it slowly into the lamp, the smell rich and faintly sweet. When the wick is lit, a new flame rises not as fierce as a bonfire, but steady, controlled. It casts a different kind of light, softer, more intimate, perfect for a long night in a cramped shelter. Curiously enough, traces of such lamps have been found deep in painted caves like Lascaux and Chauvet in France. Some scholars suggest these weren't merely for survival but for exploration. The flicker of marrow-fed flames lit the hidden chambers where bison and horses were drawn on walls. The connection between survival light and spiritual art is tantalizing. Was the lamp simply a tool or a bridge into a sacred world? Debate continues, with no clear answer. The sensory details of this scene are vivid. The flame hums softly, not roaring like a fire, but murmuring. The smell is unmistakable, animal fat burning, thick and pungent, mingling with smoke. The lamp radiates a gentle warmth, enough to thaw stiff fingers if held close. Shadows leap across tusk walls, stretching long and strange, making the hut seem larger, alive with movement. And here lies one of the more unusual practices. In some groups, fat was mixed with powdered charcoal or plant resin to make it last longer, producing a steadier burn. Imagine the experimentation, someone tossing in a scrap of resin, watching the flame flare brighter, learning through trial what fuels worked best. Fire became not just survival but chemistry, a rudimentary science of the senses. There's also the matter of food. Every drop of marrow or fat burned in the lamp was a drop not eaten. This created choices: warmth or calories. Families had to weigh whether light in the night was worth less fuel in the belly. The fact that they sometimes chose the lamp suggests how essential firelight had become, not just physically but psychologically. Sitting in utter darkness, surrounded by unknown noises, was unbearable. Better to burn a little of your feast if it meant a circle of golden safety around you. You lift the lamp in your imagination, feeling its weight, smooth stone warmed by the flame inside. You walk toward the hut's entrance, holding it low. Outside, snow falls silently, and the light scatters across white drifts, gleaming faintly against the storm. For a moment, the world seems less endless, less threatening. A small sphere of light follows you, a reminder that humans could push back the dark even beyond the hearth. One quirky possibility noted by some researchers: lamps may have doubled as heaters for small tasks. Place your hands over one, and though the warmth is faint, it is enough to thaw frozen fingers. Hold a piece of hide above it, and the fat smoke helps waterproof the surface. Survival wasn't just about big fires, it was also about small flames, intimate and versatile. Anthropologists remain divided on whether these lamps were widespread across all groups or limited to certain regions where stone was abundant. Some argue they were a hallmark of more settled bands, others that they were as common as spears. The uncertainty remains, but the evidence suggests at least some humans lived by the light of lamps through winters long and bleak. Now imagine the psychological shift. The hut is quiet, the large fire fading, but the lamp still burns. Its flame is delicate, steady, like a heartbeat in stone. Around it, people whisper softly, tell stories, sing low songs. Children stare into its glow until their eyelids droop, soot-smeared cheeks pressed against fur. That small light carries more than warmth, it carries peace, a fragile sense of control in a world otherwise wild. Later, as the fire dies completely, you see only the lamp, its glow steady in the dark. The walls close in, shadows stretch and sway, but you do not feel alone. The lamp is your sentinel, your companion. You hear the wind outside, a hollow scream across the plains. But here, within this circle of marrow-fed light, you rest safe. Close your eyes and feel the soft warmth of that glow. Smell the faint greasy tang of burning fat. Hear the quiet hiss as the wick sizzles. The world outside may be frozen and merciless, but here, in this little dome of light, you understand why humans endured. Not only because they fed the body, but because they fed the mind, easing fear with even the smallest flame. And so, as you finally drift into sleep, you realize survival is not only about big fires and heavy hides. Sometimes it is about the tiniest flame, cradled in stone, fueled by marrow and fat. That humble lamp was as vital as any spear or hut. It gave warmth to hands, light to eyes, and courage to hearts. Without it, darkness would have swallowed you whole. With it, even in the longest winter night, you carried a piece of the sun in your palm. The lamp flickers softly, but the air inside the hut grows heavy. Even with its glow, the cold presses close, sneaking in through every seam. You shift on your bed of hides, pulling another pelt across your shoulders. This is where the true genius of ancient survival shines. Not just fire, not just clothing, not just shelter, but the art of sleeping together, layered in fur, bodies forming nests of warmth like wolves in a den. Imagine lying down on a floor lined with animal skins, their softness a buffer against stone or frozen earth. The hides carry a musk of smoke, blood, and fur, not pleasant, but comforting. You curl close to your kin, children tucked between adults, elders cushioned by stronger bodies. Everyone shares not only body heat but hides, overlapping layers until the group becomes one great breathing bundle. The sound is steady, inhales and exhales blending into a low hum, like waves lapping against a shore. Archaeological traces of such practices are subtle, charred bedding layers, piles of overlapping hides discovered in ancient sites, but they tell us this. Humans treated sleep as strategy. You didn't simply collapse wherever you fell. You arranged yourself within a system of warmth. Experts widely agree that communal sleeping was as crucial as fire itself, because without it, the long nights would have been unbearable. The sensory detail is powerful. Furs trap warmth quickly, the air beneath them becoming almost humid with breath. You can feel dampness gather in the folds as heat rises from bodies. When someone shifts, the pelt slips, and a draft sneaks in sharp enough to make the whole group stir and tug hides tighter. It is an endless game of adjusting, shuffling, pressing closer. Yet there's security in the closeness, reassurance that no one will wake to find themselves frozen alone. One curious little trick likely used, placing heated stones beneath layers of skin to radiate warmth through the night. Picture hunters collecting rocks from the fire, their surfaces glowing faintly red, then wrapping them in hide before slipping them beneath bedding. The warmth seeps upward, keeping toes from stiffening, keeping breath from frosting too heavily in the cold air. A primitive hot water bottle, born from necessity. But not everyone agrees on how uniform these practices were. Some scholars suggest nests of furs were shared by entire bands, while others believe families or small groups claimed separate piles. Did dozens sleep together in one great heap? Or were there multiple circles of warmth, each family cocooned in its own pelts? The evidence is ambiguous, leaving researchers to debate the shape of sleep in the Ice Age. Close your eyes now and imagine yourself inside such a nest. The air is thick with the smell of hides, smoke lingering in your hair, the faint sweetness of burned marrow drifting from the lamp. You press your face into fur and feel warmth radiating from the person beside you. Their breath tickles your ear, their arm shifts against your side. There is no privacy here, no solitude, but neither is there despair. The warmth of bodies becomes the rhythm of safety. A quirky image to consider. Sometimes dogs or their wolfish ancestors may have curled inside the nests too. Covered in thick fur, they added warmth of their own, pressed against human legs. Archaeological finds of canine remains near hearths hint at bonds far older than we once thought. Imagine a wolf dog nestled at your feet, its body heat mingling with yours, its growl keeping predators at bay, even as it shares your blankets. The line between wild and domestic blurs, warmth being the first true bond between species. The rituals of bedding down must have been familiar, an elder smoothing furs across the group, a mother wrapping a child twice over, hunters placing their spears nearby in case of trouble. Perhaps words were spoken, small charms muttered against the cold. The act of settling together wasn't just practical, it was ceremonial, a daily rehearsal of unity. Experts continue to wonder about the psychological weight of these nests. Did such closeness forge stronger social bonds, reduce conflict, build empathy? It seems likely. Sharing warmth is sharing trust. To press your body against another is to place your survival partly in their hands. In that sense, every night became a ritual of solidarity. Now let yourself drift deeper into the nest. Hear the muffled cough of someone farther away, the soft whimper of a child in a dream. Feel the rustle of pelts as bodies shift, the draft that briefly cuts, then disappears as hides are tugged back into place. Smell the mixture of fur, sweat, smoke, and fat, a perfume of survival. For all its discomforts, this nest is a womb, a sanctuary against the frozen dark. Oddly enough, warmth sometimes brought problems of its own. In too tight quarters, lice and fleas thrived, nestled in fur and seams. Imagine the constant itch, the scratching in the dark, the quiet curses whispered into the hides. And yet, you endured, because better an itch than the icy stillness of death. Survival was never neat. It was messy, itchy, smoky, and damp. And still, it worked. Picture morning. The fire has sunk to embers, smoke lies heavy on the air, and everyone stirs slowly within the nest. Children rub their eyes. Elders groan softly as joints creak. The furs are damp, but the group is alive. You throw off your covers, steam rising briefly from your sweat, and step into the day. Cold air bites instantly. Shocking, but you are grateful nonetheless for the nest, for the fire, for another night conquered. In this world, warmth was never guaranteed. It had to be built, tended, and shared. Sleeping alone meant risking everything. Sleeping together meant survival. It wasn't comfort in the modern sense, but it was enough. Enough to make it through another night, enough to carry the ember of life into the next day. And so you learn that survival in the Ice Age wasn't only about weapons or shelters or fires, it was also about how you lay down to sleep, how you pressed into others, how you wrapped yourself in furs, how you trusted the circle to hold against the dark. That, too, was a fire one that burned in bodies rather than wood. You pull the hides closer around you now, nestling into the collective warmth, listening as the last embers of the lamp glow faintly. Outside, the cold waits, patient as ever. But inside, for this night, you are safe, you are warm, and when you finally drift into dreams, it is not alone, but within a living blanket stitched from bodies, breath, and fur. The night nest keeps you alive, but as dawn breaks, you realize the cold never gives up. The wind outside howls with renewed fury, slipping through cracks in the hide walls, searching for gaps in your furs. You glance at the fire, see it sputtering under the draft, sparks whipped sideways by gusts sneaking into the shelter. That's when the tribe begins another ritual of survival, shaping barriers against the wind. Stones are dragged, stacked, and placed carefully, not as weapons but as shields for the flames. Archaeological remains of such windbreaks can still be found, rings of stones blackened with soot, evidence that fires once burned within their protective walls. Picture yourself hauling a heavy rock across frozen ground, breath steaming, arms trembling. You set it down with a dull thud, and slowly, a low wall takes form around the fire. When the wind roars, the flames barely flicker. The difference is instant. Heat gathers, smoke rises straighter, and suddenly the hearth feels like a fortress against the storm. Specialists widely agree these simple structures were among the earliest forms of architecture. Not houses, not huts, but modest circles of stone that transformed fragile fires into reliable centers of life. Think of them as cradles, rock arms that kept fire safe, even when snow drifted and winds screamed. Without them, every meal risked being smothered, every night threatened by dying embers. The sensory details are vivid. You hear the scrape of stone against stone, the clatter as one slips and tumbles, the grunts of companions as they lift. The smell of earth clings to your hands, cold grit pressed into your palms. Once the circle is complete, you feel a difference immediately. The fire burns hotter, the heat gathering instead of scattering. Your cheeks flush with its strength, and for a moment, you almost forget the cold. Yet there is a debate that lingers among researchers. Were these stone rings always practical windbreaks, or did they sometimes serve ceremonial purposes as well? Some argue the careful placement of stones hints at more than function. Others see them purely as survival engineering. The truth may be both utilitarian in design, but no less sacred to those who depended on them. And then there's the quirky ingenuity of the human mind. Some groups may have lined these stone circles with damp earth or clay to trap heat even better, turning them into crude ovens for cooking as well as warming. Imagine dropping a bone filled with marrow into the embers, then covering it with stones. Hours later, you retrieve it, the marrow soft and steaming, a rich, calorie-laden meal drawn from fire and stone alike. Your mind drifts to the site of multiple fires in a camp, each circled by rocks, glowing like small suns across the snowy plain. From a distance, the settlement must have looked like a constellation on Earth, points of fire protected by stone, defying the endless dark of winter. Families gathered at each hearth, telling stories, repairing tools, sharing warmth. Each ring of stone wasn't just a barrier against wind, it was a circle of life. Close your eyes and imagine crouching at one of these hearths. The fire burns steady, its flames leaning lazily upward, no longer whipped into chaos. Your skin tingles from the heat. Your nose fills with the scent of roasting meat. You bite into charred flesh, greasy juices dripping onto your chin, and you taste not just food but victory. The stones did their work. The fire lived long enough to cook, long enough to warm, long enough to keep you alive. Another detail worth savoring: these stone rings lasted. Long after the fire died, long after the tribe moved on, the circles remained. Centuries later, archaeologists stumble upon them, blackened rocks whispering stories of nights long past. They are the fingerprints of survival, silent and enduring. But building them was not without hardship. Stones were heavy, fingers froze, wind mocked your efforts. Sometimes walls collapsed, scattering sparks dangerously close to hides and furs. Imagine the panic of watching your shelter threatened by the very fire you needed most. Yet through practice and persistence, people learned. Trial and error shaped skill, until the art of circling fire with stone became second nature. Anthropologists sometimes speculate about the social role of these hearths. Did each fire belong to one family, or was there a communal blaze where everyone gathered? Evidence suggests both existed. Small family fires for intimate warmth, and larger ones for gatherings, rituals, and storytelling. Picture a wide circle of people around a great fire, stones gleaming red with heat, sparks spiraling into the night. Around that glow, myths were born, songs sung, decisions made. Fire enclosed by stone became the heart of human community. One unusual possibility: some stones may have been chosen deliberately for their properties. Flat rocks that reflected heat, shiny ones that glowed when warmed. It's not hard to imagine people experimenting, discovering which rocks cracked dangerously in flame and which ones endured. Each choice became part of the slow education of survival, knowledge passed down like lore. And what of the psychological comfort? To see a fire protected, stable, reliable, it must have soothed nerves frayed by the relentlessness of cold. You no longer sat trembling, wondering if the wind would steal your heat. You sat confident, hands stretched towards steady flames, knowing the stones held back the chaos outside. That assurance was warmth in itself. As night deepens, the storm outside lashes harder. Snow whirls past, rattling against hides, piling against the shelter's entrance. But inside, the fire glows strong within its stone circle. You watch sparks rise, hear the steady crackle, feel the flush of heat on your cheeks. The wind howls, but it cannot touch you here. The stones have made a fortress for flame, and flame, in turn, makes a fortress for life. You lean back on your furs, sighing softly, and let your eyes close. Around you, others murmur, their voices low, content. Children drift to sleep with bellies full. Elders hum softly. Hunters stretch sore limbs. All because a ring of rocks now stands guard against the storm. It is a simple thing, almost laughably modest, but in the Ice Age, simplicity was genius. You understand now. Warmth was not only born from fire, but preserved by invention, by walls of stone shaped by human hands. Without them, flames would die. With them, humanity endured another winter night, one ring of stones at a time. The stone ring glows red with trapped heat, and you lean in closer, feeling the warmth seep into your stiff hands. But warmth is not only built with walls of bone or stone, it is fueled from within, stoked by what you put into your body. Out here in the endless white, you need more than a flickering fire. You need calories, heavy and rich, to keep your blood hot against the cold. And so you turn to the diet of winter. Fat, marrow, and meat, piled high in ways that modern stomachs might find overwhelming. Archaeological findings reveal butchered carcasses at ancient campsites, bones split open to scrape every drop of marrow. The evidence is clear. Fat was gold. More than lean meat, more even than fresh fruit, it was fat that kept you alive. Imagine standing beside a mammoth kill, steam rising from its massive frame, hunters chipping at bone with stone axes. The hide is peeled away, muscle carved in slabs, but the true prize lies inside the gleaming marrow, thick and greasy, like cream waiting within a bone vault. You squat in the snow, grip a femur with both hands, and smash it with a stone until it cracks. The sound echoes, sharp and wet, sending flakes of bone flying. Inside, the marrow glistens, pale yellow. You scoop it with fingers numb from cold and smear it across your tongue. The taste is rich, almost buttery, clinging to your mouth. It feels like fuel poured directly into your veins. In this frozen world, it is nothing less than survival made edible. Researchers generally agree that Ice Age humans relied heavily on high-fat diets to endure cold climates. The logic is simple. Fat burns slow and steady, keeping your body warm for hours. Lean protein alone cannot sustain you. It starves the body if eaten without fat. Hunters knew this instinctively. They prized animals with thick layers of blubber, chased herds in winter when beasts grew fattest. Without that fat, your fire might blaze brightly, but your body would flicker out. One odd and fascinating detail. Remnants of cooking pits suggest marrow and fat weren't only eaten raw but sometimes boiled with hot stones dropped into hide containers filled with water. Picture its stones glowing from the fire, plopped into a bag of water and bones, hissing as they sink. The water bubbles, marrow melts, meat softens into stew. You sip it slowly, steam curling into your face, the warmth sliding down your throat into your belly. That heat spreads outward, steady as the fire itself. Of course, not everyone agrees on how much of the diet came from meat alone. Some specialists argue that plant roots, nuts, and berries stored from earlier seasons also played a role, providing variety and essential nutrients. Others insist the harshness of Ice Age winters made plants scarce, forcing dependence on animals. The truth likely varied, some bands feasting on meat-heavy diets, others supplementing with whatever the land allowed. The debate continues, each excavation adding pieces to the puzzle. Close your eyes and imagine the feast around a winter fire. Strips of meat sizzle on stones, fat dripping into the flames, sending up sharp pops and greasy smoke. Children gnaw on roasted bones, their faces smeared with glistening oil. Hunters laugh, their teeth tearing into steaming flesh, the sound loud in the hush of the storm outside. For a brief moment, the world feels abundant, almost joyful. Bellies full, bodies warm, spirits lifted. Food is not just fuel, it is fire for the soul. There's something oddly comforting in the mess of it. Hands greasy, faces shiny, bones piling high in the snow. Dogs or half-wolves circle the edges, eyes glowing in the firelight, waiting for scraps. Someone tosses a rib, and the animal lunges, crunching it loudly. Laughter follows, warm and rare in a season that often smothers joy. A quirky survival habit might surprise you. Fat wasn't only eaten, it was burned as extra fuel. Lumps of blubber tossed into fire created bursts of heat and light, turning food into flame. The smell was thick, almost cloying, but the result was warmth when wood ran scarce. Imagine lighting a lamp with reindeer fat, the wick spitting as it drinks oil. In that glow, you don't care that your dinner is also your candle. You only care that the dark has been pushed back once more. Experts often point to the calorie needs of Ice Age humans. Estimates suggest they burned upward of 4,000, 5,000 calories a day in harsh winters, hunting, hauling, surviving. That's double or triple what many of us eat today. And so the meals had to be massive, constant, relentless. Every bite of fat was another hour alive, another mile traveled, another night endured. The sensory memory of those meals lingers even now. The crack of splitting bones, the hiss of fat in fire, the smell of roasting flesh mingled with smoke. You feel your belly heavy, warmth radiating outward from the food itself. For the first time in days, your fingers move freely, blood flowing with renewed heat. It is not comfort food in the modern sense, it is lifeblood disguised as dinner. And yet, even feasts carried shadows. Food was not guaranteed. Some nights the fire crackled, but no meat sizzled above it. Hunters returned empty-handed. Children whimpered with hunger. Stomachs ached. In those moments, the memory of fat-rich meals was both hope and torment. You knew the body needed it, but the land sometimes refused. That is the razor edge of Ice Age life. Abundance one day, famine the next. Still, ingenuity bloomed even in scarcity. Meat was dried, fat rendered and stored in hide bags, marrow smeared into cracks to harden and preserve it. Survival wasn't just about eating, but about planning, saving, stretching resources through leaner times. You imagine women stirring a pot of fattened berries, creating something like a primitive energy bar, dense, greasy, but long-lasting. Modern researchers call it pemmican's ancestor, the Ice Age equivalent of trail food. And there was ritual here too. To share food was to share life. Around the fire, meat was divided, marrow scooped, fat cut and passed hand to hand. A child fed first, an elder given the best piece. Perhaps words were spoken, gratitude muttered to the animal spirit. The act of eating wasn't just consumption, it was communion, binding the group as tightly as furs and fires did. As you lie back after such a meal, your belly full, your body humming with warmth, you feel the difference. Your breath no longer fogs so heavily. Your limbs loosen. Your mind clears. The cold is still outside, merciless as ever, but inside you are armored with fire, with furs, and with food that burns inside like a second flame. And so, you learn another truth of survival. Warmth isn't only external. It is built from the inside out, stoked by marrow, fat, and meat, carried in blood and muscle, making you a walking hearth against the dark. Without it, no fire or hide could save you. With it, you face another night with a full belly and a fighting chance. The feast ends, bellies heavy, and spirits lifted, but when the fire dies down and the storm still rattles outside, you sense that warmth is never just physical. Cold doesn't only creep into your skin, it gnaws at your mind, saps your courage, makes every howl of wind sound like a threat. And so, in the depths of winter, people turn to more than hides and fat and stone. They turn to ritual. They turn to the figures you might call shamans, those who stood between the world of bone and the world of spirit. Imagine the scene. The fire burns low, glowing red, smoke drifting upward like fingers searching the ceiling. Everyone gathers closer, huddled in their furs, eyes fixed on the figure at the center. The shaman sways gently, beads rattling against hide, a bundle of herbs smoldering in his hand. He mutters words older than memory, his voice a low hum that cuts through the storm's roar. It isn't just ceremony, it is warmth, a warmth born of belief that spirits could shield you from the frost. Archaeological clues hint at this world, bones carved with strange marks, figurines buried in hearths, pigments scattered near fire pits. Most scholars interpret these as signs of ritual offerings to forces unseen. Perhaps fire itself was treated as a spirit to be fed, coaxed, even appeased. If the flames burned high, the group felt safe. If they sputtered, dread crept in. Ritual became another form of insulation, one for the heart and mind. The sensory atmosphere is vivid. The hut is thick with smoke, its haze swirling as the shaman fans the smouldering herbs. The smell is sharp, resinous, almost bitter, mixing with the greasy tang of roasted meat. Shadows leap wildly across tusks and hides, turning them into looming figures. Children press close to their mothers, watching with wide eyes as the shaman's chants rise and fall like waves. The rhythm is hypnotic, as steady as breathing, as steady as the crackle of flame. What's fascinating is how universal this impulse seems. Even today, across countless cultures, fire and ritual remain, entwined candles lit, Incense burned, prayers whispered beside flames. Anthropologists remain uncertain about the specific beliefs of Ice Age shamans, but they widely agree that ritual gatherings around fire strengthened group bonds, reduced fear, and gave people the courage to face another night of frost. And here's a curious tidbit. Traces of red ochre, powdered iron, rich earth are often found near hearths. Some believe it was sprinkled into fires during rituals, the sparks turning red, smoke tinged with color. Others think it was smeared on bodies, turning skin a glowing hue in the firelight. Picture that, a shaman daubed in crimson, eyes shining in lamplight, chanting as the flames flare bright. The psychological effect alone must have been powerful. Suddenly the fire wasn't just warmth, it was alive, transformed into a companion spirit. Debate persists among researchers. Were shamans true religious leaders, or simply healers, keepers of practical wisdom wrapped in performance? Did their chants really summon courage, or were they simply a way of passing long, terrifying nights? The evidence does not yield easy answers, but one thing is certain: ritual mattered. It gave meaning to hardship, framed survival as part of a cosmic story rather than mere endurance. You lean closer in your imagination, listening to the chant, feeling the vibration of a drum made from stretched hide. The beat thuds like a heartbeat, steady, grounding. Around you, people close their eyes, swaying gently, lost in rhythm. The warmth of bodies mingles with the warmth of belief, until for a moment the cold outside feels powerless. An odd practice emerges in some traditions: offerings of food thrown into flames, a chunk of fat, a scrap of marrow, a few drops of blood smeared on stone. To the modern mind, it may seem wasteful, but to your ancestors, it was an exchange, a gift to the fire, to the spirits of animals, to forces that might guard them through the storm. You picture a hunter tossing a piece of meat into the blaze, watching it sizzle and pop, whispering thanks to the mammoth whose body still feeds them. The psychological comfort is unmistakable. When you believe the spirits walk with you, the cold feels less overwhelming. Fear recedes, hope brightens, and the group settles into a fragile peace. Fire becomes more than warmth. It becomes a covenant, a partner in survival. Now let yourself linger on the sensory world of ritual. The chants echo, low and rhythmic. Smoke curls in intricate shapes, glowing red at its edges. The fire pops loudly as fat drips into it, sparks spiraling upward like messengers. You feel the shiver in your skin, not from cold but from awe. In this moment, you are not just a fragile human trembling in winter, you are part of a story woven with spirits, ancestors, and unseen protectors. There's something deeply human here, the ability to take fear and transform it into ritual. Whether or not spirits were listening hardly mattered. What mattered was the comfort that spread through the group, a warmth not measured in degrees but in trust, in faith, in shared rhythm. Without it, nights might have been colder still. And so, as the ritual ends and the shaman's voice fades, you feel a quiet settling across the hut. People curl into their nests of fur once more, but the air has shifted. The storm still howls, the cold still presses, but inside, the group feels less fragile, more connected. The fire is fed not just by wood and fat, but by belief, by hope, by ritual care. You close your eyes, the faint hum of chants still in your ears, and let sleep take you. For now, the frost waits outside. Inside, you carry warmth not only in your body, but in your spirit, stoked by the fire of ritual. The ritual fades, leaving the hut in smoky stillness. But even as your eyes drift closed, the cold whispers outside like a predator waiting its turn. When dawn comes, hunger stirs again, and the hunters prepare to set out. They pull on their furs, sling spears across their backs, and whistle low. Out of the shadows slip figures with pricked ears and gleaming eyes, not wholly tame, not wholly wild. Wolves, or rather, the beginnings of what will one day become dogs. Imagine them padding silently alongside hunters, their paws sinking into snow without a sound. Their coats are thick, steaming faintly in the cold, and when they curl close at night, their bodies radiate heat like living blankets. They are companions in the making, though the bond is fragile, born from mutual need. Humans share scraps of meat, wolves share warmth and warning. Together, they face the brutal winter with sharper odds of survival. Archaeological remains suggest this partnership began tens of thousands of years ago, when humans and wolves crossed paths on hunting grounds. It is widely accepted that wolves were drawn to camps by the smell of meat and fire. Some may have lingered, tolerated by people who realized their presence kept other predators at bay. Slowly, generation by generation, those wolves grew less wary, their pups raised nearer the hearth. And somewhere in that long winter dialogue, trust took root. You picture it now, a fire ring glowing in the night, children laughing as a wolf pup gnaws on a bone, elders watching warily but allowing it. Hunters notice the animal's keen senses, ears twitching at sounds beyond human hearing, noses alerting them to prey or danger. The wolves gain scraps of fat and marrow, the humans gain early warning and extra warmth. The exchange is unequal, yet perfect. Survival for both. Specialists still disagree on the exact path of domestication. Was it humans who actively captured and raised wolf pups, or wolves who self-selected by choosing to linger near camps? The debate continues, evidence pointing both ways. What is certain is that winter made the bond necessary. In the frozen silence, you needed allies, even those with sharp teeth. Now close your eyes and feel it. A heavy body curled against your legs, its fur coarse but warm, its breath steady. You reach down, fingers sinking into its thick coat, feeling heat seep into your skin. The wolf stirs, shifts, then settles again, a living stone against the cold. You exhale, grateful. Even without fire, this animal carries warmth you could not conjure alone. One curious detail emerges from ancient burials. Humans and dogs sometimes interred together, suggesting the bond was more than convenience. Was it affection? Respect? Ritual? You imagine an elder stroking the muzzle of a faithful animal before the last hunt, whispering words as if to a friend. The line between ally and kin blurred in those nights, when survival was shared breath by breath. There's also the matter of hunting. Picture a group moving silently through snow, wolves darting ahead, noses low, ears flicking. They find reindeer trails long before human eyes can. Their barks and growls herd animals toward ambush points, their speed and endurance turning the chase into a dance of cooperation. The kill feeds both species. The warmth of shared meat becomes another fire between them. A quirky possibility. Some groups may have even lain down with their dogs inside nests of hides, using them as extra insulation. You can almost smell it, the sharp, musky scent of fur mixed with human sweat. Not pleasant, but life-saving. Children wrap their arms around dogs like living pillows. Elders rested feet against furry bodies. In the hush of the storm, those animals were not pests, they were survival partners. Anthropologists often marvel at this bond, pointing out that no other large predator forged such a partnership with humans. It is one of the most remarkable survival strategies of all time. Without it, perhaps winter would have been harsher, hunts scarcer, nights colder. With it, humanity gained warmth not just of body but of companionship, a spark of loyalty in a bleak season. Now imagine the sensory scene of a winter camp with dogs. The fire crackles, furs rustle, and in the shadows, low growls rumble as the animals sense movement beyond the circle of light. Eyes glint in the dark, wolves lurking, predators prowling, but your dogs bristle, warning you before danger strikes. Fear eases. You stretch out your legs, resting them against a warm flank, knowing you will be alerted if trouble comes. The debate continues. Did humans tame wolves, or did wolves tame themselves by choosing us? The truth may lie in between, a slow dance of curiosity, tolerance, and need. But as you lean against your furry companion in this frozen night, you realize it hardly matters. What matters is that warmth and trust are shared, bridging the gap between species. Picture morning again. The fire has died down, the cold bites hard, but as you rise, your dog shakes itself, snow spraying from its coat. It looks at you, tail flicking faintly, and pads beside you into the hunt. Its breath mingles with yours, steaming in the air. You carry a spear. It carries instinct sharper than any blade. Together, you face the frozen expanse. And when night falls, when the storm lashes again, you return to your bone hut, curl into hides, and feel that living warmth press close once more. You understand then that survival was never solitary. It was shared with fire, with kin, and now, with animals who chose not to remain enemies. As you drift into sleep, the dog sighs beside you, its body heavy against yours. Outside, the cold prowls endlessly, patient as ever. But inside, you are shielded by flame, by fur, by companionship that will one day become the most enduring bond in human history. The dog at your feet stirs, ears twitching toward distant sounds. You stroke its thick fur and feel gratitude for its warmth. But even as you sit by the fire, your gaze drifts toward the cloak wrapped around your shoulders. It keeps you alive, yes, but you can see the seams gaping, the stitching crude and uneven. Cold air slips through those cracks, stinging your skin like icy knives. It becomes clear. Survival in this endless winter isn't only about having hides, it's about making them tighter, warmer, more durable. And so, in this frozen age, humanity turns bone into a new kind of tool, the needle. Archaeological finds from sites as old as 40,000 years reveal delicate bone needles, polished smooth, with tiny drilled eyes. Imagine the care it took to carve such a thing, with nothing but stone tools, grinding, shaping, piercing. To look at one even now is astonishing. So slender, so precise, yet made from the leg bone of a reindeer or the rib of a bird. You hold it in your mind's hand, feel its cool surface, marvel at its fragility and strength. With this, hides could be pulled tighter, seams overlapped, gaps closed. It was the leap from draped skins to true clothing. Most experts agree these needles represent one of the quiet revolutions of Ice Age life. No longer were furs clumsy blankets tied with sinew. They became stitched garments, fitted to body shapes, layered with precision. With a needle, you could make trousers that hugged the legs, boots stuffed with grass and lined with fur, hoods that closed tightly around the face. This was not just comfort, it was survival engineering. Picture yourself crouched by firelight, a needle between your fingers, threading sinew through the eye. The thread itself is tough and wiry, twisted from tendons stripped and dried, slippery but strong. You pull it through a hole punched in hide, tugging until the seam closes. The sound is faint but distinct, a soft squeak as sinew slides through leather. Stitch by stitch, you transform loose hides into armor against the cold. And here lies one of the more fascinating questions. Did women become the first true tailors of humanity? Many anthropologists believe so, pointing to ethnographic parallels in later hunter-gatherer cultures where women specialized in clothing production. If true, it means that the act of sewing was not only a craft, but a gendered survival role, one as critical as hunting mammoths. Specialists continue to debate this point, but the notion lingers every garment in the Ice Age may have been a mother's, sister's, or daughter's labor of love. The sensory world of sewing is surprisingly vivid. You feel the slickness of sinew thread between your fingers, the prick of bone needle against your skin, the smell of hide warmed by the fire as you soften it in your lap. Your shoulders ache from hunching over, your eyes blur in smoky lamplight, but slowly the garment takes shape. At last you lift it, a tunic stitched closed, tight enough to trap heat, flexible enough to move. You slip it over your head and feel immediate difference, no gaps, no drafts, just warmth hugging every inch of your body. One curious trick. Bone needles weren't only used for stitching hides. Some may have been used to weave plant fibers or attach decorative beads to clothing. Imagine a cloak not only functional but patterned with shells, teeth, or bits of ochre. Was it vanity? Was it ritual? Or was it simply that even in hardship, humans could not resist making things beautiful? The answer remains unclear, but the evidence of decorated clothing hints that survival was never just practical, it was also cultural. Another layer of ingenuity: waterproofing. After sewing garments, hunters sometimes smeared them with animal fat or resin to block moisture. You picture yourself rubbing warm grease into new boots. The smell pungent, your fingers slick. When you step into snow, it squeaks beneath your feet, but your toes remain dry. This is more than a comfort, it's the difference between walking for days and losing feet to frostbite. Archaeologists continue to wonder about the earliest appearance of tailored clothing. Was it first developed in the depths of Siberia, where winters were longest? Or did it appear earlier, among groups facing more modest chills? The timeline is hazy, but the outcome is clear. Sewing changed everything. It made possible expansion into harsher climates, migrations farther north, survival in places where naked fire and furs alone would never suffice. Now close your eyes and imagine your entire group dressed in such garments. Hooded figures move across snow, fur-lined boots crunching, cloaks pulled tight, seams holding back the icy gusts. They look less fragile, more formidable creatures made for the cold rather than strangers battling it. For the first time, winter seems less like an unbeatable enemy and more like a challenge you are prepared to meet. A quirky survival detail deserves mention. Needles were sometimes carried in small bone cases or strung around the neck for safekeeping. Imagine losing one, you'd be nearly helpless. Your clothes unraveling, your warmth leaking away stitch by stitch. To carry a needle was to carry life itself, as important as fire-making tools or a spear. The act of sewing also wove communities closer. Gatherings around the hearth weren't only for eating or storytelling, they were for working hides into clothing. One person cut patterns, another stitched, another softened leather with a scraper. Laughter rose, children watched, stories passed along while garments grew. The social warmth of shared labor was as real as the physical warmth of finished clothes. Think, too, of the symbolic weight: a child's first garment, stitched by a mother's hand; a hunter's new boots, gifted before a journey; a cloak adorned with beads marking status or strength. Clothing was more than survival. It was identity, protection, and story, all sewn together with bone and sinew. You can almost hear the quiet click of bone needle against stone, the soft pull of sinew, the murmur of voices in smoky lamplight. Outside, the storm rages, but inside, creation continues, steady and defiant. Each stitch is an act of defiance against the cold, a declaration that humans will not merely endure, they will adapt, innovate, transform the world's harshness into tools of comfort. As night falls, you slip fully into your newly sewn tunic, fur-lined boots snug on your feet, hood drawn tight. You feel heat cling to your body more firmly than ever before. The cold still bites at your cheeks, still presses against the hide walls. But now, for the first time, you feel armored. Your clothing is not just drape protection, it is crafted survival. You lie back on your bedding, the needle still gleaming faintly nearby, and you realize, tonight, you are warmer than the night before. And so the lesson lingers. Fire warms you from outside. Fat warms you from within. But clothing stitched with bone and sinew becomes your second skin, your constant shield. It is the quiet revolution of the Ice Age, the one that allowed your ancestors to walk farther, live longer, and face the fiercest winters without freezing to death. The bone needle rests beside you, its tip still faintly shining in the firelight. Your new boots squeak as you shift, snug and lined with grass, and you marvel at how much warmer you feel compared to nights before. Yet even with clothing and fire, the Ice Age demands another kind of wisdom, knowing when to stay and when to move. No shelter lasts forever. No valley remains gentle for long. The people of your band survive not by stubbornly holding one place, but by learning a rhythm with the land itself. Archaeological evidence reveals patterns of seasonal movement, traces of camps built and abandoned, caves smoked black for only part of the year. Most experts agree that humans rotated their shelters according to the seasons, returning to caves in the bitter months, then spreading out to lighter huts or open-air camps in the warmth of summer. Imagine it now. Spring arrives, snow thins, rivers swell with meltwater, and your group rises to its feet, gathering hides, tools, and memories. The cave is left behind, its soot and bones silent witnesses until you return again with the frost. The cycle makes sense. Winters in caves or bone huts gave insulation, protection from wind, and proximity to stored food. Summers allowed freedom, mobility, lighter shelters of wood and hide. This rhythm is like a heartbeat, thumping steadily year after year. Migrate, return, depart, come back. In this way, your people avoided exhausting the resources of one place, while always keeping a refuge waiting when the cold struck hardest. Close your eyes and picture the departure. The hearth is allowed to cool, ashes scattered, a few glowing coals tucked carefully into pouches for the journey. Children tug on smaller cloaks, dogs circle with excitement, hunters sling spears and packs. You glance back at the cave one last time, the walls dark with smoke, the floor etched with footprints, the roof dripping from melted frost. Then you turn away, following the river's path towards summer lands. Specialists still debate how far these seasonal moves stretched. Some argue they were modest shifts, valleys to plains, hills to riversides. Others propose longer migrations, dozens or hundreds of miles across steppe and tundra. The truth is probably both. Some groups stayed close, others wandered far, depending on game and weather. The debate lingers, but the evidence agrees on one thing: people rarely stayed still. Movement was as natural as breathing. And here's a curious little detail. Certain shelters were recycled, returned to year after year. Excavations reveal layers of ash and stone tools stacked like the pages of a book, proof that families revisited the same spot across generations. Imagine that familiarity, arriving each winter to the same cave, recognizing soot stains, finding bones from meals long past. Survival wasn't only about the present, it was about memory, about knowing where warmth had always been found before. The sensory memory of these shelters clings to you. You recall the smoky sting of a particular cave, the scent of its stone walls damp with winter. You know exactly where the hearth belongs, which corner is driest, where the wind sneaks least. To return is to feel like a traveler coming home, even if home is only borrowed stone. That rhythm comforts you, the knowledge that the land itself holds places waiting for you. Now imagine summer. The hides are lighter, the days long. You build huts of wood and turf, open to breezes, smelling of grass. And Sunday, smoke drifts lazily rather than choking. Fires burn smaller, meant for cooking rather than life or death warmth. Your body loosens, muscles relax, children run bare-armed across green meadows. In those months, warmth is easy, almost taken for granted. But in the back of your mind, you always know winter waits. You remember the cave, the nest of hides, the taste of marrow in the dark. You know you will return. One unusual habit discovered in some sites: caches of tools and food left behind, hidden in stone alcoves or pits, waiting for the next winter. Picture burying a pouch of dried meat, a bundle of flint, a precious needle case. Months later, when you return shivering in snow, you dig into the earth and find them waiting, a message from your past self to your future. That kind of planning shows just how deeply survival became intertwined with memory and foresight. Anthropologists continue to argue about the scale of planning. Were these seasonal cycles instinctive responses to immediate need, or deliberate strategies passed down through oral teaching? The evidence hints at both. Perhaps you didn't know exactly when winter would strike hardest, but you remembered stories. Last time, the river froze early. Last time, The herds came late. Those memories shaped choices, guiding your steps like invisible maps. Now focus on the sensory journey of migration again. The crunch of snow in winter becomes the squelch of thawed earth in spring, then the dry crackle of summer grass. Each season carries its own sounds, smells, textures. The cold hush of winter nights, the damp musk of thawing soil, the sweetness of berries crushed underfoot in summer. You move with these rhythms, adjusting clothing, shelter, and diet as naturally as you breathe. A quirky but believable practice. Summer camps may have been used to repair winter gear. Needles stitched lighter hides into new garments, resin smeared on boots, stones gathered to carry as future hearths. Warmth wasn't only enjoyed in summer, it was prepared, stored, and shaped for the coming freeze. Every bright day carried a shadow of winter's memory. This rhythm of seasonal life was more than practical. It shaped identity. You belonged not to a single house, but to a cycle of places: cave, hut, meadow, riverbank. Each had its season, its role, its warmth. You felt at home not in permanence, but in movement itself. Picture one evening in late autumn. The first sharp frost crackles on grass. Breath fogs in air once warm, and the band gathers. Eyes turn northward toward the cave, voices murmuring about stores left months ago. Children are hushed, hunters tighten belts, elders nod knowingly. The decision is made. It is time to go back. And so you walk, carrying embers, hides, and memory, retracing steps etched into generations. By the time you arrive, snow is falling again. The cave yawns open, dark and familiar. You step inside, smell the old soot, feel the rough stone under your fingers. Fires are lit in the same places, hides spread in the same corners. Warmth blooms again, as if the cave itself remembers you. It is not permanence in the modern sense, but it is continuity, a bond between people and place. And so, as you curl into your furs once more, you understand another truth of survival. Warmth comes not only from fire or clothing, but from rhythm, from knowing when to move and when to return. Winter is not an enemy to fight blindly. It is a season to be danced with, step by step, shelter by shelter, year by year. You settle once more in the familiar cave, its walls blackened from countless winters of smoke. The fire snaps and spits, illuminating your cloak, now thicker and tighter thanks to bone needle stitches. For a moment, you feel satisfied warmth has been won. But then you notice something strange. A hunter enters the cave, his cloak, not plain brown hide, but streaked in swaths of red pigment. The ochre stains the fur like blood and fire intermingled. You blink, uncertain whether this is mere decoration or something deeper. In the Ice Age, warmth was never only about practicality. It was also about beauty, about meaning, about turning survival gear into symbols. Archaeological sites across Eurasia reveal hides and tools smeared with ochre, beads stitched into clothing, and cloaks adorned with shells and teeth. It is widely accepted that people didn't simply wear furs, they embellished them. Picture a tunic painted with swirling ochre lines, shimmering in firelight like flowing flames. Perhaps the paint offered ritual power, perhaps it scared enemies, or perhaps it was simply the eternal human desire to decorate, even in the harshest of times. You imagine yourself running your fingers along a fur cloak, stiffened by pigment, feeling the grit of red powder against your skin. The color is vivid, almost alive, glowing in the fire's flicker. It transforms a simple garment into something fierce, a statement against the grey monotony of snow. Scholars still disagree on the purpose. Was it insulation, symbolism, or both? Pigment could have added slight waterproofing, thickening hides, but it also clearly carried aesthetic and spiritual weight. The sensory details are rich. The smell of crushed ochre is earthy, metallic, sharp in your nostrils. Mixed with animal fat, it becomes a sticky paste, smeared across seams or painted in patterns. When dry, it flakes onto your hands, leaving smudges of red that cling like scars. Children giggle as they press their palms into the powder, leaving prints on walls and furs. The firelight makes these marks glow, turning hides into living art. One curious little practice might have been this: furs decorated with beads or shells rattled as you moved, announcing your presence. Imagine hunters moving through snow, cloaks whispering with the sound of shells clicking. It might seem impractical, but perhaps it carried meaning, announcing identity, marking belonging, or signaling in ritual dances. Beauty, after all, often coexists with inconvenience. Experts remain divided on how widespread clothing decoration was. Some argue it was rare, reserved for ritual leaders or special occasions. Others suggest it was surprisingly common, that even in the bitterest cold, humans insisted on color and pattern. The debate lingers, but the evidence of ochre and beads stitched into hides cannot be ignored. Survival alone was never enough. People wanted to feel more than warm, they wanted to feel alive. Now picture the moment of donning such a cloak. You slip it over your shoulders, and instantly you feel heavier, warmer, but also transformed. The paint makes you smell faintly of iron and fat. The beads clink softly as you walk. Children stare, wide-eyed. You catch your reflection in a patch of ice, red streaks glowing against white snow. Suddenly, you are not just surviving. You are declaring, "I am here, I endure, I am more than frost's prisoner." A quirky tidbit from ethnographic parallels. Some hunter-gatherer groups used decoration to invite animal spirits. Wearing red pigment might honor the blood of a reindeer, or shells might echo the flowing rivers where fish were caught. Perhaps Ice Age humans did the same. You can almost hear an elder explaining, "Wear the color of the hunt, and the herds will find you. Wear the bones of the mammoth, and its spirit will walk beside you." The sensory power of decorated hides extends to gatherings. Picture a midwinter night, the storm raging outside, the fire roaring inside. Dozens gather, cloaks painted, beads glimmering, faces daubed in ochre, drums made of stretched hide thud, feet stomp, voices rise. The flickering firelight turns pigments into flames dancing on fur, transforms a freezing cave into a place of power and beauty. Warmth is no longer just physical, it is cultural, spiritual, psychological. There is another angle too: identity. Decoration marks you as part of the group. In the vast whiteness of the Ice Age, where strangers meant danger, seeing familiar patterns must have reassured. The red streaks on a cloak weren't random, they told you who someone was, who they belonged to. In this sense, decorated clothing was warmth of another kind, social insulation against isolation. Close your eyes and imagine wearing one yourself. The hide presses against your shoulders, heavy but snug. The ochre smell clings to your nose, strong and earthy. As you move, beads jingle faintly, the sound echoing against the stone walls. You sit by the fire, watch the flames catch red streaks in your cloak, and you feel both warmer and prouder. It is not only the fire keeping you alive, it is the meaning stitched and painted into your very clothing. Scholars continue to debate whether these decorations were everyday wear or special performance. But as you sit in your cave, gazing at the red lines glowing like embers, you sense that it hardly matters. Even if worn rarely, they carried weight, lifting spirits when frost threatened to break them. They turned survival into expression, turned necessity into art. And perhaps that was the true magic. In a world where cold threatened to strip you down to nothing, where every breath fogged like smoke and every night was a gamble, people still found room for color, pattern, song. They made their warmth visible, tangible, and beautiful. And in doing so, they carried not just their bodies but their spirits through winters that should have killed them. You lie back on your bedding now, cloak heavy with pigment across your chest. The fire burns steady, the storm still howls, but the red marks catch your eye one last time before sleep. They glow like frozen embers, proof that warmth is not only something you feel, it is something you can see, shape, and wear. You close your eyes, soothed not only by heat but by beauty, and drift into dreams painted in red. The painted cloak rustles as you roll over, its ochre streaks leaving faint red smudges on your furs. Outside, the storm begins to ease, but the bitter cold lingers, pressing against the cave mouth like a watchful predator. You listen to the crackle of fire, the muffled breaths of your companions, and then you hear something softer still, a child's whimper. In the Ice Age, survival wasn't only about hunters or shamans. It was about the smallest, most fragile members of the band, and how they were kept alive in a world that seemed designed to snuff them out. Archaeological evidence tells us that infants did survive the Ice Age, carried through winters by ingenious methods of warmth and care. Excavations of burial sites show tiny skeletons wrapped in layers of hide, beads sewn into garments, ochre sprinkled across swaddled remains. It is widely accepted that children were swaddled tightly against their mothers' bodies, shielded by layers of fur and warmed by skin-to-skin contact. In a sense, the human cradle was not wood but flesh, warmth shared from one body to another. Imagine it now. A mother settles by the fire, her infant pressed against her chest beneath her cloak. The baby's skin is hot and damp with breath, its cries muffled by furs. She hums low, her voice merging with the crackle of flames, and the child quiets, soothed by rhythm and heat. The cave is cold, but within her embrace, a small pocket of summer endures. Specialists still debate how long infants were breastfed in such harsh conditions. Some argue that extended nursing, even up to 4 or 5 years, was common because it provided both nourishment and warmth. Others suggest shorter periods supplemented by mashed marrow or softened roots. The truth remains uncertain, but the principle is clear. Children were kept alive not by chance, but by deliberate strategies of warmth, nourishment, and closeness. A quirky glimpse into daily practice comes from ethnographic parallels. In some Arctic cultures, babies were placed inside specially sewn fur bags, like primitive sleeping sacks, lined with grass that could be replaced when soiled. It is possible Ice Age mothers did something similar. You can almost feel it, the softness of fur against tiny skin, the rustle of dried grass beneath, the heat trapped in a snug cocoon. Practical, warm, and surprisingly hygienic. The sensory world of childhood in the Ice Age was intense. A child opened its eyes to darkness flickering with firelight, breathed air heavy with smoke, pressed its face against fur that smelled of musk and grease. Small fingers grasped sinew threads, tugged at beads, smeared ochre across cheeks. Survival lessons began almost before speech, watching adults scrape hides, listening to stories murmured in fire's glow, learning by touch and sound long before words carried meaning. And childhood itself was short. By the age of 6 or 7, many children were already expected to help gathering wood, carrying embers, fetching snow to melt into water. You picture a small figure bundled in oversized furs, trudging clumsily through drifts, arms full of sticks. Their cheeks burn red with frost, but their smile is fierce, proud to contribute to the hearth's survival. Scholars still question what mortality rates were in such times. Evidence suggests many children did not live past infancy, but those who survived grew resilient quickly. They learned that warmth wasn't a given but a skill. A child's first lessons weren't numbers or letters, but how to tie a cloak tighter, how to huddle in the nest, how to hold a coal without burning fingers. Survival was the curriculum, taught by every elder, every night, every storm. Now close your eyes and imagine the sounds of an Ice Age childhood. Laughter, shrill and bright, echoing in a stone cave. The sharp crack of a stick dropped into fire, followed by delighted giggles at the sparks. The patter of tiny feet on frozen ground as children chase one another in play, their voices cutting through the monotone hush of snow. Even here, in the teeth of winter, play survived, carrying warmth of its own. One unusual find: carved figurines shaped like animals, small enough to fit in a child's hand. Were they toys? Charms? Training tools? The answer is uncertain, but you can imagine a child clutching a mammoth figurine as they fall asleep, believing it will protect them from frost. Warmth wasn't only physical, it was emotional, stitched into stories and objects that soothed fears. The psychological burden on parents was immense. Every night was a calculation. Is the baby warm enough? Is the fire steady? Is the cloak thick? You imagine mothers tucking embers beneath stones to keep them alive, fathers repairing cloaks while humming softly, siblings curled protectively around little ones. Each act was small, but together they created the fragile cocoon in which children survived. And yet, fragility never fully vanished. There must have been nights when the fire died, when the cold seeped too deep, when cries fell silent. Archaeologists find graves of children buried with beads and ochre, proof of loss carried with love. Even in grief, warmth was offered, the earth padded with fur, ochre sprinkled like sunlight on frozen skin. Survival was not always possible, but dignity and care endured. Now picture a brighter night. The cave is alive with sound, children giggling as they chase sparks, elders clapping rhythmically, dogs barking playfully. In the center, a mother rocks her child in a sling of hide, humming as flames leap higher. Around them, the tribe smiles, warmed not only by fire, but by the reminder that life continues. Children are proof that winter, however harsh, cannot erase the future. Experts remain divided on whether Ice Age children were sheltered or thrust quickly into responsibility. But as you sit here in your mind's eye, you realize it hardly matters. Either way, they learned survival from birth warmth, not only as a need, but as a way of being. And in turn, their presence gave adults reason to endure. To keep a child alive in this world was to defy the cold itself. The sensory image lingers. A baby nestled against fur, breath fogging the air, fingers clutching a bead necklace, eyes closing to fire's glow. It is the smallest flame of all the fragile warmth of childhood, yet it is perhaps the most powerful, for without it, the story of humanity would have ended in those frozen caves. As you finally pull your furs tighter, drifting towards sleep, you hear a child's laugh ripple through the smoky air. It is thin, bright, fragile as a coal, but it glows, reminding you that even in the harshest winters, warmth was always passed forward, from elder to parent to child, from body to body, from generation to generation. The child's laughter fades into the crackle of fire, and soon the cave settles into its steady rhythm of breath and warmth. Yet even in such moments of safety, danger lurks nearby. The Ice Age world teemed with predators, saber-toothed cats, cave lions, dire wolves, each more than capable of turning humans into prey. The cold itself was merciless, but those beasts of the dark made survival even more precarious. To endure them, people needed not only fire and furs, but barriers of another kind, circles of protection, glowing boundaries that turned chaos into sanctuary. Archaeologists have uncovered fire pits arranged in multiple rings, suggesting not just a single hearth but a perimeter of flames. Imagine standing in the open tundra, the horizon vanishing into black night, when suddenly you hear the roar of a lion carried by the wind. Fear coils in your stomach, but you don't flee, you build. You and your companions scatter embers, strike sparks, feed logs, until a chain of fires surrounds the camp. The darkness retreats, the circle glows, and the predators pace just beyond the light, their eyes gleaming like fallen stars. Most researchers agree that fire circles played dual roles, warmth and defense. Flames kept frostbite at bay, but they also kept hungry beasts cautious. A lone fire could be skirted. A ring of them formed a barrier of light and smoke. You can almost see it now. Dozens of flames dancing in the snow, sparks rising like prayers, the band huddled within, children watching shadows move beyond but never cross. The sensory world of such a night is rich. The hiss of damp wood, the acrid sting of smoke, the steady hum of flames. You smell singed fur from logs too close to the fire, hear the sharp crack when resin bursts. Outside the circle, a low growl vibrates the air, sending chills down your spine. But inside, Your skin flushes with heat, your heart steadies. The fire is not only flame, it is fortress. Here's a curious little practice mentioned by some researchers: mixing green branches into the fire to create thick smoke. The acrid haze would sting the nose but drive predators back. A deterrent made from nothing more than sap and flame. Imagine choking on the smoke, eyes watering, but choosing it gladly if it meant lions kept their distance. There's still debate, however, on how often fire was used explicitly as a defense against animals. Some specialists argue the evidence for fire circles is more symbolic than practical, perhaps used in ritual rather than nightly defense. Others believe predators were such constant threats that fire circles were essential parts of survival. The truth may lie somewhere between, but as you crouch near the flames, you cannot deny the comfort of a glowing barrier between you and the dark. Close your eyes and picture predators beyond the ring. A saber-tooth slinks closer, shoulders rippling, fangs catching the faint glow. Its eyes lock with yours across the firelight. It growls low, a rumble like thunder in its chest. But then it stops. The flames dance between you, heat shimmering, sparks rising, and the beast hesitates. Slowly it turns, vanishing back into the black. Relief floods through you. The fire saved your life without lifting a spear. A quirky thought. Perhaps fire circles also worked the other way, keeping humans inside. The boundary wasn't only for animals, it was for children and wanderers, reminding them not to stray into the night. Fire was a fence of light, a glowing tether that kept the band close. To step outside its warmth was to risk not only cold but teeth in the dark. Anthropologists often point out that the glow of multiple fires also created psychological warmth. It wasn't just one fragile flame, it was many, a constellation on the ground. Each fire added to a sense of safety, each circle a reminder that the group was not powerless against the vastness of the Ice Age. Within that halo, people sang, worked hides, told stories, and even danced, knowing the flames guarded them. Now let yourself imagine a winter night within such a circle. You hear the storm raging beyond, snow whirling sideways, predators pacing just out of sight. Yet inside, the air is warmer, the snow melted into mud, the ground steaming faintly. Sparks rise like fireflies, swirling into the black sky. The glow paints faces in gold and red, children clapping as elders tell tales. Fear lingers, yes, but it is kept at bay by fire's steady song. One odd possibility comes from burned bones discovered in such hearths, sometimes the remains of animals not eaten. Could they have been offered deliberately, a gift to the flames to strengthen the circle's power? Imagine tossing a wolf bone into the blaze, watching it hiss and crack, believing that by feeding the fire predator's flesh, the spirit of the beast would be subdued. Whether superstition or survival, the practice shows again how fire and meaning intertwined. Scholars remain uncertain whether these fire circles were rare, used only in moments of great threat or routine. Yet the logic is timeless. Light creates safety. Even now, we light lamps at night, streetlights glowing against darkness. The instinct is old, older than memory. In the Ice Age, it was not only instinct, but survival. As the fire circle burns, you feel your body relax despite the growls in the distance. You stretch your legs, feel warmth seep through your hides, watch children drift into slumber. The flames blur your vision, turning predators into vague shadows. For once, the night feels less endless, the cold less cruel, the darkness less absolute. And when morning comes, the ashes remain, blackened rings scattered across snow, proof of your survival. The predators are gone, the camp still whole. You rise, gather embers for the day's journey, and leave behind circles that will whisper to archaeologists thousands of years later. Here, humans lit walls of fire. Here, they turned night into safety. Here, they endured. You curl again into your furs, hearing the echo of that glowing perimeter in your dreams. Fire has become not only warmth but guardian, not only flame but wall. It is a shield as much as it is a hearth, and tonight, That shield keeps you alive against beasts and frost alike. The fire circle fades with dawn, leaving blackened rings in the snow. The predators slink away, their pawprints etched like ghosts into the frozen earth. Your band gathers its belongings, hides, spears, ember bundles, and sets out again. In the Ice Age, stillness was death, movement was survival. But travel in brutal winter meant braving open plains where wind whipped endlessly and the sky pressed low like a ceiling of ice. Out there, you could not always carry heavy logs or stones. You needed something lighter, something you could throw together quickly when the snow turned vicious. And so, your ancestors became masters of building with what surrounded them most: snow itself. Archaeological traces are scant, snow leaves, little behind, but ethnographic parallels with Arctic peoples suggest this truth. Humans in cold lands learned to carve winter into walls. They built shelters not of bone or wood, but of packed snow and ice. Imagine crouching with numb fingers, carving blocks of frozen crust with a stone blade, stacking them in spirals, each block angled slightly inward until they formed a dome. The work is exhausting. Your breath freezes in your beard, your knuckles bleed from scraping. Yet slowly, a curved hut rises, dazzling white in the dim Sunday. It is widely accepted that snow, though born of cold, insulates brilliantly. Trapped air pockets hold warmth, turning frozen water into a blanket. Inside such a dome, the temperature can hover just below freezing, even when outside the wind howls at 40 below. That difference, small on paper, is life-saving in reality. You picture crawling into the snow hut, lighting a small fire of twigs and fat, and suddenly the air grows still, quiet, almost gentle. The blizzard outside becomes a muffled hum. The sensory experience is striking. The walls glow faintly blue in lamplight, crystalline and smooth under your fingertips. The air is damp, heavy with the smell of snow and smoke. When you exhale, the mist of your breath lingers longer than usual, caught in the enclosed space. You can hear every sound more clearly: the scrape of bone needles, the soft rustle of hides, the steady crackle of fat in a lamp. It feels womb-like, protective, a paradoxical warmth built entirely from frozen water. Specialists still debate whether Ice Age groups in Europe used snow shelters regularly or only occasionally. Some insist that caves and bone huts sufficed, while snow houses were later innovations. Others argue that any group in an open, treeless steppe would have been forced to turn to snow, at least sometimes. The truth remains hazy, but logic suggests, when the world gives you nothing but snow, you learn to turn snow into walls. A quirky tidbit worth imagining. The first attempts at snow shelters probably collapsed often, burying people in drifts. Trial and error must have taught lessons quickly. Angle blocks inward, smooth seams with slush. Cut an entrance low to keep warm air from escaping. You can almost hear the curses, the laughter, the shouts when a wall caves in, followed by the determination to rebuild, this time stronger. Now close your eyes and imagine stepping into such a dome. The wind ceases instantly, the roar replaced by silence so profound you hear your own heartbeat. The walls glow dimly with reflected firelight, shimmering like glass. You sit on hides spread across packed snow, your body sinking slightly, the cold pressing from beneath but dulled by fur. The air grows warmer with every breath, every body adding heat to the small chamber. Soon, frost melts and drips from the ceiling, tiny droplets pattering onto your cloak. You laugh softly, it is still freezing, yet compared to the storm outside, it feels like a sanctuary. The psychological relief is immense. In the endless openness of the steppe, where the sky feels crushing and wind endless, a snow hut creates intimacy, closeness, boundaries. It turns chaos into a room. Within those walls you can rest, tell stories, even dream without the constant gnaw of wind in your ears. Anthropologists often argue about how widespread snow construction was in the Ice Age. Some claim it was a clever adaptation limited to certain bands, while others believe it was a universal skill for people living on open tundra. Either way, the principle is timeless. Humans adapt the very substance that threatens them. Cold is turned against itself. You picture hunters trudging across a plain at dusk, the storm rising. They stop, glance at one another, and without words begin carving snow. Blades slice, blocks stack. Children fetch handfuls of slush to smooth seams. Within an hour, a dome rises, glowing against the storm. They crawl inside, one by one, laughter and chatter muffled as the last block seals the roof. Outside, the wind screams. Inside, the group is cocooned. Warmth blooms slowly, fragile yet real. A curious extension of this practice. Some snow shelters may have been temporary, built for hunting expeditions rather than entire families. Picture two hunters lying in a narrow snow tunnel, waiting for reindeer to pass, their breath fogging the air, their cloaks pressed tight. They rest in silence, hidden by the very landscape they use for warmth. Survival and strategy fuse in a single invention. Another odd thought: smoke vents. Too much fire inside would suffocate the group, so tiny holes had to be carved in the dome to let fumes escape. Imagine poking a hole with a spear, watching smoke coil upward, smelling the acrid tang lessen. The balance between fire and suffocation was delicate. One misstep, and warmth became poison. Now lean into the sensory stillness again. Inside the dome, the storm's voice is muted, transformed into a distant whisper. Children's laughter bounces oddly off curved walls, creating echoes. Drops of meltwater tap rhythmically, like a slow drum. You stretch out on furs, the snow beneath surprisingly solid, not biting. Your cloak clings warmly. Your face flushes from the steady glow of a fat lamp. For the first time all day, you feel not hunted, not exposed, but hidden, cradled, at peace. Experts remain intrigued by this paradox. Snow huts are cold, yet they preserve warmth. They are fragile, yet they endure storms. They melt in sun, yet they save lives in frost. Perhaps this contradiction was part of their magic, a reminder that survival often comes from embracing rather than resisting the world's harshness. As the night deepens, you drift into sleep inside your glowing dome. The walls shimmer faintly, reflecting firelight like frozen stars. Outside, snow piles higher. The wind claws at your shelter, but you are untouched. You close your eyes, warmed by the irony that the cold itself has become your shield. And when dawn comes, the hut still stands. You crawl out into blinding white, breath catching at the sight of sunlit snow stretching endlessly. Behind you, the dome collapses with a muffled sigh, erasing your presence. No ruins remain, no bones, no soot, only memory. Perhaps that is why archaeologists find so little. Snow shelters leave nothing but whispers. You shoulder your pack, adjust your furs, and move on. The world is still merciless, but you carry with you the knowledge that even the fiercest enemy can be turned into ally. In the Ice Age, warmth could be carved from frost itself, shaped into walls, and lived within. The snow dome melts away in memory as you trudge across the endless plain. The air is crisp, painfully sharp in your lungs, each breath a blade. Your cloak is heavy, your boots damp with frost. And though the fire last night saved you, daylight brings its own trial, wind that cuts without mercy. No shelter can move with you on the march. No hut of bone or snow follows your steps. Out here, warmth must be worn, layered, and cleverly managed. The true survival trick of the Ice Age was not just building shelters, but learning the art of dressing in layers, creating insulation with every scrap of hide and hair. Archaeological finds confirm this ingenuity. Stitching marks on hides, fragments of fur preserved in frozen graves, and even the remains of woven grasses suggest that Ice Age people wore more than just draped skins. It is widely accepted that they crafted layered clothing, inner hides worn fur side in, outer layers reversed with fur outward. sometimes even grass or moss stuffed in between. Imagine wrapping yourself in such a cocoon, the soft underfur tickling your skin, the coarse outer hair breaking the wind, the grass padding rustling faintly as you walk. The sensory details are vivid. You lift your arm and hear the muffled swish of layers rubbing together. You shift your weight and feel the crunch of dried moss underfoot in your boots. The smell is pungent. Hide smoke, animal musk, faint resin rubbed into waterproof seams. Yet despite the weight, warmth blooms against your chest, spreading to your arms, your legs. The cold wind presses against your outer fur, but it cannot pierce the multiple barriers. You carry your shelter with you, step after step. Anthropologists still debate how early tailored layering became widespread. Some argue that sewing technology advanced specifically because of the Ice Age climate, forcing people to develop sophisticated clothing. Others suggest layered hides existed long before, with the Ice Age refining rather than inventing the practice. The academic quarrels remain unresolved, but the outcome is undeniable. Without layers, your ancestors would have frozen in the first gale. One quirky practice stands out from ethnographic parallels: stuffing boots with dried grass as insulation. Imagine sitting by the fire at dawn, carefully packing your shoes with handfuls of brittle stalks, the texture scratchy but effective. The grass traps heat, wicks away moisture, and can be replaced easily. Each evening you pull out damp stalks, toss them into the flames, and refill your boots with fresh insulation. A small act, repeated daily, meant the difference between frostbitten toes and steady steps across tundra. There's also evidence that cloaks were sometimes double-layered, stitched so that fur faced both inward and outward. Picture a heavy garment, fur brushing your skin on one side and bristling against snow on the other. The effect must have been remarkable heat trapped inside, snow sliding off the exterior. You can almost feel its heaviness on your shoulders, the way it shifts as you walk, the way it becomes a second hide, turning you into something half human, half beast. Close your eyes and imagine your entire band dressed in layers, figures trudging across frozen plains, cloaks flapping, hoods pulled tight. From a distance, they look less like fragile humans and more like a herd of furred creatures, adapted to winter's cruelty. Children bundled so thickly they waddle clumsily, laughing despite the cold. Hunters with snow crusted on their cloaks, the wind whipping through but failing to bite their skin. Together, you resemble winter's own kin, moving as if bred for frost. Scholars often wonder whether such clothing was purely practical or carried symbolic meaning. Did layering hides of different animals lend spiritual protection? Was wolf fur chosen for strength, reindeer for endurance, mammoth for resilience? Perhaps each layer carried not only heat but the spirit of the beast it once belonged to. You picture hunters chanting as they don cloaks, thanking the animal whose hide will now shield them from death. Another curious survival trick: waterproofing layers with animal fat. Hunters smeared cloaks until they gleamed, creating greasy shields against snow. The smell must have been overpowering, rancid, smoky, but it kept dampness out. You imagine trudging through sleet, fat glistening on your cloak, droplets rolling away instead of soaking through. Discomfort turned to protection, yet another lesson in accepting unpleasantness for survival. The layering system extended even to sleep. At night, people piled cloaks and hides into shared nests, layering them over bodies like thick quilts. Children disappeared under heaps of fur, leaving only tufts of hair and sleepy eyes visible. Each layer added weight, but also warmth, pressing bodies together until the cold outside seemed less threatening. Experts remain divided on whether Ice Age layering represents the first true fashion or simply functional innovation. Some point to decorated cloaks as evidence of both warmth and identity. Others argue practicality dominated. Yet as you pull your layered hood tighter in your imagination, you realize the truth may be both. Warmth is survival, but survival becomes identity. To dress in layers of fur and grass is not just to endure it, is to declare, I belong to this land, I know its ways. I will not be defeated by it. Now focus on the sensory rhythm of daily dressing. Dawn comes, breath fogs, and you crouch by the embers, pulling stiff boots from the fire's edge. You stuff them with new grass, the stalks crackling, your fingers aching from cold. You tug on leggings stitched from hides, the fur brushing your calves, the seams creaking as sinew threads stretch. You throw your cloak over your shoulders, its weight pressing like a hug, and pull the hood down until only your eyes peer out. At last, you exhale, a plume of steam rising, and step into the snow. The cold bites at your face but fails to pierce the cocoon you've built. A quirky image lingers. Perhaps clothing was layered so thick that people waddled like penguins, their steps short and stiff. Children might have toppled into snowdrifts, giggling as parents hauled them upright. Even clumsiness was worth the trade, because warmth meant life. And when evening comes, you peel the layers off one by one, laying them near the fire. The outer fur steams, the smell of wet hide filling the cave. The inner layer is damp with sweat, clinging to your skin. You sigh with relief as warmth from the fire dries it, then redress once more, preparing for night. This cycle repeats endlessly. Layer, sweat, dry, relayer. Survival is not glamorous, but it is steady, reliable, practiced until it becomes second nature. As you lie down at last, cocooned in overlapping furs, you reflect on this truth. Shelters may collapse, fires may flicker, food may run thin, but so long as you carry your layers, you carry your warmth. The cold cannot strip it from you unless you let it. In the Ice Age, clothing was not accessory, it was armor. Not fashion, but fire stitched into skin. You close your eyes, the rustle of layers muffled against your ears, and drift towards sleep. Outside, the wind still lashes the plains, relentless as ever. But inside your cocoon of fur, moss, and hide, you feel untouchable, warmer than the storm deserves. You understand now. Your ancestors survived not by being stronger than the cold, but by being cleverer, by learning to wear warmth itself, one layer at a time. The wind shrieks outside, battering the stone walls of your shelter, but you lie cocooned in your layers, snug in your fur-lined boots. The fire smoulders low, its glow a pulse in the darkness. And yet, warmth alone is not enough. The Ice Age demanded not only endurance but cleverness. You soon discover that the greatest tool against freezing nights was not merely bone or hide, but the spark of the human mind, the ability to innovate with whatever materials the land offered. Archaeological discoveries reveal a fascinating range of fire-starting tools beyond simple flint. In some sites, chunks of pyrite iron sulfide have been found, blackened and scarred from striking. It is widely accepted that our ancestors used pyrite with flint to create showers of sparks. Picture yourself kneeling in snow, a hunk of stone in one hand, a shard of flint in the other. You strike hard, and sparks leap out, sizzling as they land on a nest of dry moss and crushed fungus. You blow gently, your breath trembling in the cold, and suddenly the moss glows, smoke curling upward like a serpent. Fire, born from stone and breath, takes root again. The sensory details are sharp. The clang of stone against stone rings in your ears, metallic and bright. Sparks flash yellow and die almost instantly, leaving faint trails in your eyes. The smell of scorched fungus rises, earthy and bitter. Your hands are numb, but you cup the glowing ember, coaxing it with patience, knowing that one slip could mean another night lost to frost. Specialists continue to argue about the role of fungi like amadou, a spongy material from certain trees, in fire starting. Some believe Ice Age people carried dried fungus in pouches as tinder, while others question whether this knowledge came later. The debate lingers, but the evidence is tantalizing. Fragments of fungus charred by sparks, hints of its role as a portable ember catcher. Imagine tucking a piece of fungus into your pouch, its soft surface glowing faintly as you hike across the snow, your personal ember bank to restart flames at will. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers suggest that powdered minerals or even crushed bone dust might have been sprinkled onto tinder to encourage sparks. Imagine an elder scattering white powder over moss, muttering softly, then striking flint until a spark leaps to life. Whether science or superstition, the ritual must have felt magical, the birth of fire conjured from stone and dust. Close your eyes and imagine the rhythm of making fire. Strike, spark, blow. Strike, spark, blow. Each attempt carries hope and dread in equal measure. The cold gnaws harder with every failed spark. Your hands ache, breath clouds thickly, and still you strike, determined. Finally, one spark lingers, ember blooming red. Relief washes through you. A single flame means survival, meals, warmth, safety. In this world, fire-making is not a chore, it is a ceremony of life renewed. Some anthropologists note how these moments shaped human psychology. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was control, mastery over an element both fragile and wild. The act of striking sparks became a metaphor for endurance. Failure meant despair, success meant triumph. Each hearth was not only a blaze but a reminder. We can command nature itself, if only for a while. The sensory rewards after success are immediate. Smoke coils upward, filling the shelter with its bitter tang. Flames lick at sticks, their crackle soothing as a lullaby. Your cheeks flush. Your numb fingers tingle painfully as blood returns. The fire becomes not just heat but music, smell, light, all the senses engaged in comfort. A curious practice emerges in speculation. Children may have been taught to play with sparks, learning from a young age how to coax fire. Imagine little hands clutching flint, giggling at tiny sparks, elders correcting gently. Survival knowledge wasn't locked away, it was passed down like a song, repeated until it became instinct. Yet, researchers still disagree on whether fire was carried more often than kindled anew. Was ember carrying the norm, or did spark making become routine? Some argue that striking sparks was too unreliable in wet or snowy conditions. Others believe skill eventually made it dependable. The truth likely varied, but both methods reveal a relentless ingenuity, never letting flame truly vanish, whether by carrying its ghost or conjuring it again from stone. Now lean deeper into the sensory image. The flint feels sharp and cold in your hand, edges cutting your palm. The pyrite is heavy, metallic, faintly sulphurous in smell. Sparks leap like fireflies, brief and dazzling. Your breath roars in your ears as you blow into moss, cheeks reddening, eyes watering from smoke. Then the miracle orange flame blossoms. Heat brushes your face. Shadows spring to life. The contrast between icy despair and fiery relief is overwhelming. One odd but plausible detail. Some bands may have sung or chanted softly while coaxing flames, both to calm themselves and to teach rhythm to children. You imagine an elder murmuring, "Breathe, blow, wait," in a steady tone, turning fire-making into ritual as much as skill. The chant lingers even after flames roar high, another melody tied to survival. As night falls again, you realize the pattern. Warmth was never guaranteed. It had to be remade, reclaimed, coaxed from unyielding stone again and again. That cycle, though exhausting, gave humans resilience. Fire-making was more than technology, it was discipline, patience, and faith in persistence. Picture yourself now reclining beside the new blaze. Sparks still glow faintly on the ground where they fell, reminders of how close you came to failure. But the fire hums steady, its warmth wrapping your body, your spirits lifted. You are not just warm, you are powerful, armed with the ability to turn stone into flame. And so the truth of this chapter settles over you like a blanket. Warmth came not only from hides and huts, but from innovation, from sparks struck in the dark. In the Ice Age, the line between freezing and surviving was as thin as the edge of flint. One spark could save a life. One misstrike could end it. Every ember was a triumph. Every fire, a miracle. You close your eyes, soot still smudged on your fingers, and let the fire's hum lull you. Outside, the cold waits, patient as ever, but inside, you hold the secret of sparks. It is enough. The fire hums softly, sparks drifting upward like tiny spirits. You rub soot from your hands onto your cloak, black streaks smearing the ochre already painted there. The storm outside subsides at last, leaving a muffled hush broken only by the crack of ice shifting in the river nearby. You step outside, breath pluming white, and see your band already busy. For while fire and hides and bone huts keep you alive, survival demands more than endurance, it requires planning. In the Ice Age, storing warmth was just as vital as making it. Archaeological digs reveal storage pits dug into frozen earth, sometimes lined with stones or hides. Many contain animal bones, cracked and scraped, proof that food and fuel were set aside for lean days. It is widely accepted that groups cached resources not just for convenience, but as insurance against sudden blizzards or failed hunts. Imagine kneeling in snow, clawing at the ground with a stone scraper until the earth gives way. You line the pit with hide, pile in marrow bones and strips of dried meat, then cover it with turf. A marker, perhaps a stone, perhaps a carved branch is left behind, known only to your band. That cache is a pocket of warmth waiting in the earth itself. The sensory experience is earthy and raw. You dig until your fingernails ache, soil clinging beneath them, the smell of frozen ground sharp in your nose. The cold stiffens your hands, but soon the pit takes shape. Meat is stacked inside, fat glistening, bones greasy to the touch. The air carries the metallic tang of blood. At last, you pat the earth closed, hands pressing hard until the pit is sealed. Above ground, nothing betrays what lies below, just snow and stone. The warmth is hidden, but you know it is there, waiting. Specialists still debate whether these caches were used mainly for food or also for fuel. Some argue that bundles of dried dung or moss were hidden alongside meat, kept safe from moisture for use as tinder. Others believe only food was stored, fuel gathered fresh. The truth remains elusive, but the principle is the same. Foresight meant warmth when the world turned cruel. One curious tidbit arises in certain ethnographic parallels. Some caches were communal, others secret. Perhaps one family buried meat in a hidden place, known only to them, a private insurance. Imagine the tension. If someone else discovered it, did they steal in desperation or respect the boundary? Survival created not only warmth, but questions of trust, ownership, and morality. Now picture returning to a cache in the depths of winter. The snow is thick, the wind bitter. Your band huddles, weary and hollow-eyed. At last an elder recognizes the landmark, a crooked tree, a boulder shaped like a crouched beast. The ground is scraped, snow pushed aside, soil cracked open. Inside lies treasure, dried meat, marrow bones, perhaps a pouch of fat. Relief is immediate. Laughter rises, spirits lift. Warmth blooms not only in bellies but in hearts. The past self saved the present. The sensory joy is overwhelming. You chew dried meat tough as leather, its smoky taste filling your mouth. Fat melts slowly on your tongue, coating it, filling your stomach with heat. Children grin, grease smeared on their cheeks. For a moment, the blizzard outside seems less fierce, the cave less damp, the world less hostile. Scholars continue to argue about how advanced such storage became. Did Ice Age bands create true underground freezers, or were caches more improvised, shallow pits for short-term use? Evidence points to both, but what cannot be doubted is the brilliance of thinking ahead in a world that offered no guarantees. To plan was to live, to forget was to freeze. A quirky image lingers, caches sometimes guarded not by stones alone but by bones placed atop, perhaps as warnings. Imagine stumbling upon a pit sealed with a mammoth skull, its hollow eyes staring upward, as if daring intruders. Was it intimidation, ritual, or mere convenience? The answer is uncertain, but the imagery is haunting death, marking life's storage. The social implications are just as fascinating. Sharing food from a cache reinforced bonds. The act of digging together, dividing fairly, ensured trust within the group. You can almost hear the voices murmuring in the cave. This is yours. This is ours. We will eat together. Warmth of spirit matched warmth of fire, preventing fractures in a world where disunity could kill. Yet sometimes caches failed. Perhaps wolves dug them up, or rot spread through hides. Imagine uncovering your pit only to find bones gnawed bare, fat gone, scraps frozen useless. Despair would grip your group, hunger gnawing as cruelly as frost. And yet, humans endured, digging again, trying again, learning from each failure. Close your eyes now and imagine walking the winter plains, knowing that hidden beneath the snow are pockets of safety, invisible hearths, buried warmth. Each one is a promise from your past to your future. They give courage to step farther, to hunt longer, to survive storms with less fear. Anthropologists reflect on how storage shaped the human mind. To plan ahead is to imagine a future self, to care for someone not yet hungry, not yet cold. That mental leap, thinking beyond the immediate, may have been as important as fire itself. It is the warmth of foresight, a spark in the mind that turns survival from chance into strategy. The sensory echoes of that foresight are everywhere. You taste dried marrow warmed in the fire, feel fat drip across your chin, hear the crunch of frozen meat breaking in your teeth. You smell the earthy musk of soil as caches are opened, the rich smoke as old stores are cooked anew. Each sense confirms the same truth. You are alive today because you thought ahead yesterday. As night falls, you sit in the cave, belly full from stored food. The fire glows steady. The hides rustle softly as companions shift into sleep. You run your fingers across the bone of your spear and think about the next cache, the next pit, the next gift to your future. The cold will not relent, but neither will you. Warmth is not only a flame or a cloak, it is foresight buried in earth, waiting to be unearthed in the darkest hour. And so, as you drift into slumber, the memory of buried treasure soothes you. Beneath snow and soil, warmth sleeps. And when you need it, you will dig, and you will find it, and it will save you once again. The memory of buried caches lingers in your thoughts as the fire dwindles to glowing coals. You curl beneath your cloak, stomach full, body humming with restored warmth. Yet survival is never guaranteed. Even with food stored, even with shelters built, winter keeps pressing, relentless as a tide. What your ancestors learned was this: the cold is not conquered by one invention alone, but by layering strategies upon strategies, weaving them together into something greater. And so, the Ice Age was not only an age of survival but of cooperation. Archaeological finds show campsites where multiple hearths cluster together, bones scattered in shared piles, hides stretched wide across communal spaces. It is widely accepted that humans did not endure these winters in isolation, but in groups, bands bound not only by blood but by necessity. Picture it now. A dozen figures huddled in one cave, their fires burning side by side, their voices weaving together in the smoky dark. The warmth is greater not just because of flames, but because of company. The sensory world of cooperation is vivid. You hear the rhythmic sound of many hands scraping hides, the clatter of flint tools shaping bone needles, the overlapping hum of voices telling stories. The smell of cooking meat mixes with the musk of furs, the sharp tang of smoke, the faint sweetness of dried berries traded from another band. Every sense is crowded, layered, dense, just like survival itself. Anthropologists often highlight how cooperation extended beyond immediate families. Some groups may have joined forces in winter, creating larger communities to pool resources. There is evidence of overlapping hearths and vast middens of bones, suggesting gatherings far bigger than a single family could sustain. The debate continues: were these seasonal reunions, or permanent winter villages? The truth remains hidden, but the idea shimmers. warmth amplified by community. One curious tidbit: cooperation may have extended to neighboring groups, with exchanges of tools, hides, or food stores. Imagine a weary band stumbling into a valley, greeted by another's firelight. Suspicion lingers, but hunger speaks louder. A gift is exchanged: a bundle of dried meat, a polished flint. Bonds form. For one night, rivalries soften, and warmth spreads not only within but between groups. Now close your eyes and imagine sitting at a communal fire. Flames roar higher than usual, fueled by more hands gathering wood. Dozens sit around it, cloaks overlapping, children chasing each other between legs. Laughter rises, echoing against stone walls. Stories are told: tales of great hunts, of spirits guarding the fire, of ancestors who braved even harsher storms. The glow reflects in dozens of eyes, each spark a reminder that you are not alone. Specialists remain divided on whether such cooperation was a conscious choice or simply forced by conditions. Did humans deliberately seek out larger groups, or did the weather push them together until they realized unity was strength? Either way, the effect was transformative. Shared warmth created not only survival but culture, language, story. Another quirky glimpse of Ice Age ingenuity: large hides stretched across poles to create communal tents. Picture entering one thick smoke hanging near the roof, the air humid from many bodies, the ground warm with pressed furs. The noise is constant: children crying, elders muttering, hunters sharpening spears, but the warmth is undeniable. You sit shoulder to shoulder, breathing in the musk of sweat and fur, grateful for the chaos because it means life. The sensory effect of such crowding is overwhelming. Heat radiates from every side. Sweat beads on your forehead. Hides stick damply to your skin. Smoke stings your eyes, but laughter and voices ease the discomfort. You realize that warmth does not always mean comfort. It sometimes means crowded, noisy, messy togetherness. But in the Ice Age, comfort was a luxury. Warmth, in any form, was survival. Anthropologists often speculate that these crowded winters forged stronger social bonds. Perhaps gossip, myth, and song flourished in the long nights when everyone was pressed together. Perhaps disputes simmered too, tempers fraying under pressure, but even conflict was proof of life. To live so closely was to be reminded constantly: no one survives alone. One unusual practice likely tied to this: storytelling itself as warmth. Elders spoke in rhythmic voices, their words a fire for the mind. Children listened, eyes wide, forgetting the chill outside. Stories gave structure, passed on hunting wisdom, explained why the snow fell or the fire burned. In that sense, narrative became another blanket, one that covered not bodies but spirits. Now picture yourself again, nestled in such a gathering. Smoke thick, bodies pressed close, the cave echoing with voices. You chew on a strip of dried meat, grease clinging to your fingers, and listen as an elder describes a great mammoth hunt, his arms sweeping wide. Sparks rise from the fire, shadows leap across tusks and walls, and for a moment, the cave feels alive with more than just heat. It feels alive with meaning. Experts continue to argue about whether language itself expanded during these winter nights, shaped by the necessity of communication in close quarters. Did the cold drive people to talk more, to invent words for sharing resources, resolving disputes, organizing hunts? If so, then warmth did not only keep bodies alive, it may have forged the very fabric of human speech. The sensory echo of that possibility lingers. Hear the overlapping murmur of voices, the click of consonants, the drawn-out vowels. Smell the smoke coating your throat, taste grease on your lips, feel the heat pressing in from every side. All of it blends into a memory stronger than any single fire. This is warmth braided from bodies, stories, and shared flame. As night deepens, you curl among your companions, their shoulders against yours, their breath mingling with yours. The fire burns steady, but you realize it no longer needs to be large. The group itself has become a furnace, each body adding to the whole. You close your eyes, soothed not only by heat but by the knowledge that you are part of something greater. And so the lesson settles in your bones. Survival in the Ice Age was never solitary genius or single inventions. It was a tapestry woven from many threads. Fire, hides, bone huts, snow domes, caches, tools, rituals, companionship. Each alone might fail. Together they formed something unbreakable. Together they formed warmth. You sigh, the sound lost in the chorus of breathing around you, and drift into dreams. The storm may return, the cold may tighten its grip, but tonight you rest in the heart of a circle stronger than frost, community itself. The cave is thick with warmth from so many bodies pressed close, yet when dawn rises pale and thin, the cold sweeps in once more. You feel it creep along the stone floor, a reminder that no fire lasts forever, no cloak holds heat without care. Your companions stir, coughing from the smoke of the night before, and soon the day's work begins again. Firewood must be gathered, hides repaired, tools sharpened. Yet one task is more crucial than any other: hunting. Without animals there is no food, no fat, no fur, no bones. Every layer of warmth you wear, every spark you coax, begins with the creatures that share this icy world with you. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age sites is rich with animal remains: mammoth bones, reindeer antlers, aurochs horns. It is widely acknowledged that survival hinged on these animals, not just for meat but for fuel and insulation. Imagine standing in the pale sun, staring across a vast snowy plain at a herd of reindeer clustered together. Their bodies steam faintly in the cold, their antlers like forests swaying against the sky. Your band creeps closer, every step deliberate, the snow crunching softly beneath layered boots. Breath fogs in the air, hearts thrum with the knowledge that one kill could mean warmth for weeks. The sensory weight of the hunt is immense. The air tastes of ice, dry and metallic. Your hands clutch a spear, its shaft smooth but cold, sinew binding creaking as you grip tighter. You hear the faint snort of reindeer, the crack of distant ice, your own pulse beating like a drum in your ears. The moment is fragile, one mistake, and the herd will scatter, leaving your band hungry. But then the chase begins, snow flying, bodies lunging, shouts ringing out. Specialists debate whether humans hunted mammoth and other large beasts regularly or only opportunistically. Some argue organized hunts with spears and fire drives were common, while others suggest scavenging played a larger role. Regardless, the bones tell the story. Huge creatures fell, and from them came not just food but the very materials of survival. Fat burned in lamps, hides stretched into cloaks, bones carved into needles and shelters. Each animal was not only warmth, but civilization in miniature. A quirky detail emerges from some finds: marrow bones cracked open with such precision that scholars wonder if marrow was prized even more than meat. Picture sitting beside a fire, splitting a femur with stone, and sucking out the rich, greasy marrow. It coats your lips, warms your stomach, and fills you with energy far beyond its size. The sound of bones splitting, the smell of fat sizzling, the taste of marrow melting on your tongue, it is warmth distilled. Close your eyes and imagine the scene after a successful hunt. The herd has scattered, snow trampled and stained, but a carcass lies heavy on the ground. Your band cheers, laughter echoing. Knives of flint flash as hides are peeled back, steam rising from the warm body into frigid air. The smell is sharp, blood and musk and earth mingled. Children watch wide-eyed, knowing this moment means survival. Every scrap is gathered, meat dried into strips, sinew twisted into thread, bones hauled for tools, fat packed into pouches. Nothing is wasted, because everything is warmth. Scholars still discuss how much coordination these hunts required. Did dozens work together in planned drives, or did smaller groups rely on ambushes? Evidence of cliffside kills suggests cunning herds driven over edges, bones piled below. You can almost hear the shouts, the pounding of hooves, the thunder of collapse as animals fall. Risky, dangerous, but astonishingly effective. One unusual practice comes from evidence of fat lamps carved from stone or bone, fueled by animal fat. Imagine a shallow bowl filled with grease, a wick of moss burning steadily. The flame is steady, smoky, faintly sweet-smelling. It doesn't roar like wood, but it glows for hours, turning a cave into a haven of light. Warmth, in liquid form, harvested from the very body of the beast. Now imagine the psychological relief of such abundance. For days after a hunt, the cave is alive with cooking smells, with laughter, with full bellies. Cloaks are repaired with new hides, boots stuffed with fresh grass. The fire burns bright, fueled by marrow bones that hiss and crackle. You lie back, satiated, your skin flushed, the cold kept firmly outside. In these moments, winter feels conquerable, tamed by human cooperation and animal sacrifice. But scarcity was never far. Sometimes the herds vanished, migrating beyond reach. Sometimes the great beasts grew wary. Imagine walking for days across empty snow, bellies aching, torches guttering low. The silence of an empty steppe is crushing, more frightening than a storm. You begin to doubt, will you find warmth again? Yet still, you walk, driven by hunger, by memory of past hunts, by the knowledge that survival is just one kill away. A quirky echo of this persistence shows in cave art, paintings of animals etched deep into stone. Scholars suggest many purposes: ritual, memory, teaching. Perhaps they were prayers painted in ochre, desperate hopes that herds would return. You picture kneeling in flickering firelight, drawing reindeer on a wall with greasy fingers, whispering, "Come back, bring us warmth." Was it superstition? Or was it a reminder to children, these creatures keep us alive, honor them? Experts remain divided on whether such art was purely symbolic or held real ritual weight. But whether prayer or practice, the result was the same. Animals became central not only to survival, but to culture, myth, and meaning. They were warmth, made flesh, both hunted and revered. The sensory memory of animals lingers in every part of life. The musk of hide, the oily smoke of burning fat, the crunch of bone cracked for marrow, the sound of antlers clashing in the distance, the echo of herds moving like thunder. Even in dreams you hear them, the rhythm of hooves, the whisper of fur. As you curl again into your bedding, warmed by cloaks stitched from animal hides, you reflect on this truth. Every breath of warmth you take tonight comes from the hunt. The fire burns on fat, the cloak rests on fur, the boots hold dried sinew, even your full belly hums with marrow. The Ice Age demanded tribute, and animals gave it. Humans, in return, honored them in memory, in story, in paint. So you drift into sleep, belly full, fire steady, cloak heavy, surrounded by the warmth of beasts turned into guardians. Outside, the steppe waits, herds shifting in the distance, storms whispering on the horizon. But for now, you rest in the knowledge that your ancestors mastered survival not alone, but in partnership with the very creatures that walked beside them. The fire burns low, fueled by marrow bones that hiss and spit. You wake in the pale light of dawn, the air still heavy with the musk of last night's feast. Around you, companions stir slowly, their cloaks creaking with frost at the edges. The children roll sleepily beneath heaps of fur, cheeks rosy from warmth. Yet as your eyes adjust, you notice something striking. Above the hearth, smoke curls around the cave ceiling where faint images shimmer in ochre. Mammoths, bison, reindeer, ghostly herds frozen in red and black. In the Ice Age, warmth was not only kept in bodies or fires, it was stored in stories, etched into stone. Archaeological sites such as Chauvet and Lascaux reveal paintings tens of thousands of years old, depicting animals with astonishing vitality. It is widely accepted that these images were not idle doodles but carried deep significance. Imagine crouching in flickering firelight, ochre-stained fingers tracing antlers across rock. The air is thick with smoke. The fire's glow makes beasts seem to move. In that moment, you feel less like you are drawing and more like you are calling the herd into being, pulling warmth from imagination itself. The sensory experience is mesmerizing. The rock wall is cold under your palm, rough in some places, smooth in others. Pigment smells earthy, metallic, gritty between your fingers. You hear the quiet rasp of stones scraping pigment into powder, the faint hiss as fat is mixed in to make paste. When you paint, your heartbeat quickens, every line catching the glow of flame, every shadow making the figures leap as though alive. For a brief moment, the cave becomes not just a shelter but a theatre of memory and hope. Scholars continue to debate the purpose of these images. Some argue they were rituals of hunting magic, ensuring success by capturing animals in paint before chasing them in reality. Others believe they were teaching tools, showing children how prey looked and moved. Still others suggest they were simply the world's first art beauty for beauty's sake, even in the heart of winter. The arguments endure, but all agree. The paintings carried meaning far beyond their pigments. One quirky possibility is that the flicker of fire itself was part of the artwork. Imagine sitting in the dark, firelight making painted animals shift and ripple, shadows turning bison into stampeding herds, mammoths into swaying giants. The movement would have seemed magical, alive, as if the cave itself breathed with the animals. Perhaps that illusion was deliberate, the artists choosing curves and ridges of rock to bring pictures to life. Now picture yourself among a small group gathered before such paintings. Elders chant softly, their voices low and rhythmic. Children sit wide-eyed, mouths open. The fire throws sparks, shadows dance. Someone points at a painted reindeer and whispers, "This is the herd that feeds us." We follow it, and it follows us. The cave feels warmer in that moment, not just from the fire, but from shared meaning, from the connection between art and life. Archaeologists still wonder whether painting was reserved for certain people, specialists, shamans, visionaries, or shared by all. The evidence is unclear. But as you smear ochre onto your cloak, you suspect that in some form, everyone participated, whether through handprints pressed onto walls or simple lines drawn beside great masterpieces. Even a child's mark mattered. Each imprint was a way of saying, "I was here, I endured, I belonged." A quirky tidbit comes from hand stencils found in caves, negative imprints, where someone spat pigment around their hand pressed to stone. Some are small, belonging to children or women. Imagine the sensation. Cold stone against your palm, breath hot as you spray pigment, the sudden reveal of your hand's ghost glowing in red. That imprint endures for tens of millennia, a frozen gesture of warmth passed to the future. The sensory echoes of cave art are powerful. Smoke thickens the air, eyes water, throats itch, yet hearts beat faster as animals come alive on walls. The sound of chanting mixes with the steady crackle of fire, with the scraping of stone on stone, with the soft gasps of children watching. Even in hunger, even in frost, humans created beauty, turning cold stone into warm memory. Experts point out that art itself may have been a survival tool. It kept minds sharp, bound communities together, and preserved knowledge across generations. When winter seemed endless, paintings reminded everyone of the herds that would return, of hunts that had succeeded before, of spirits that guided and protected. In that way, art became as important as firewood or hides, fuel for the soul. Now lean into the sensory quiet of a finished painting session. The cave glows faintly, walls alive with beasts. The air is heavy, smoky, but filled with awe. Children lie back on furs, eyes still fixed on glowing figures. Elders smile softly, murmuring blessings. You close your eyes. The image is burned into memory. When you hunt again, you will carry those shapes with you, as if the walls themselves walk beside you. Anthropologists argue endlessly about whether cave art was sacred or everyday, extraordinary or routine. But as you picture the painted walls glowing in the fire's hush, the distinction blurs. In the Ice Age, Survival was never just about physical endurance. It was also about creating meaning, finding warmth in images, voices, and shared imagination. A quirky thought lingers. Perhaps the walls themselves became ancestors, the painted beasts guardians of the fire. Imagine lying down at night, the figures watching silently, their shapes glowing faintly in dying firelight. The cave no longer feels empty. It feels populated, alive, protective. You feel less alone. And so, as you finally drift towards sleep, your head resting on furs, you feel warmth not only from fire but from art. The beasts on the wall breathe with you. The handprints whisper across time. The ochre glows faintly in your dreams. In this frozen age, humans learn to survive not only by clothing the body and feeding the fire, but by painting warmth into the stone itself. You close your eyes, soothed by the thought that somewhere, tens of thousands of years later, people will still look at these walls and feel what you feel now. A strange, glowing connection across time. A shared warmth that endures beyond the Ice Age. The painted beasts fade into shadow as your eyelids grow heavy. The fire crackles low, licking at bones blackened with grease, and the cave hums with quiet breathing. Yet even as warmth holds you, a question stirs. How did humans endure not just cold air, but cold time? Winters were not weeks, not months, but long arcs of darkness stretching across years. The Ice Age taught your ancestors more than quick fixes. It taught patient strategies woven across seasons, across generations, across memory itself. Archaeological evidence suggests some groups tracked animal migrations with astonishing regularity, returning to the same valleys or rivers year after year. It is widely acknowledged that survival was not random wandering but patterned knowledge. Picture an elder pointing at the horizon, saying, "When the sun sinks low, the herds move east. When the river freezes, the fish sleep here." Such words were not idle. They were maps written in memory, guides that warmed the future as much as fire warmed the present. The sensory act of memory is powerful. Imagine standing in snow, wind cutting your cheeks, and suddenly recalling the taste of berries from a valley far south, the smell of reindeer musk where trails cross, the sound of ice cracking where fish once gathered. These aren't just thoughts, they are sensory echoes that guide your feet. Knowledge is warmth of another kind, stored not in pits or hides, but in minds. Specialists still disagree on how knowledge was passed. Some argue for structured oral traditions, songs, chants, repeated patterns that preserved information exactly. Others believe memory was more fluid, stories shifting with each telling. The debate endures, but all agree. Without transmission, survival would have ended. Winter taught humans not just to endure, but to teach endurance. A quirky example lies in the idea of time markers. Some archaeologists suggest Ice Age people marked seasons by stars or by natural signs like the cry of migrating birds. Imagine lying on your back in snow, staring at constellations, whispering, "When that star rises, the herds will come." The cold sky itself became a clock, its glittering fires another form of warmth, promises written above that survival would continue if one waited. Now picture the cave at night, filled with murmured stories. Elders speak of past winters, of hunts and storms survived. Children listen wide-eyed, their bodies pressed close beneath furs, their minds soaking up lessons like embers catching tinder. One says, "Never build near the river when the frost is loud." Another says, "Always keep a pouch of grass dry." Each phrase is a spark, passed hand to hand, warming future winters. Anthropologists often note that memory may have been collective rather than individual. Knowledge wasn't hoarded by one elder, it lived in the group, repeated, reinforced, carried by many tongues. In that sense, warmth became communal not only in fires but in minds. Each voice added to the blaze. One curious tidbit comes from decorated bone artifacts marked with notches. Some researchers believe these were tallies, perhaps of moon cycles or hunts, early calendars scratched into ivory. Imagine running your finger along grooves in mammoth bone, counting the days since last snow, predicting when herds will pass. The object itself becomes a tool of memory, a frozen story carved into bone. The sensory detail of such an object is striking. The bone is smooth, cold under your hand, the notches shallow but distinct. You trace them one by one, lips moving silently, recalling stories tied to each mark. Knowledge is tactile, carried not just in mind but in touch. Each notch is a coal of memory, glowing in its own way. Experts continue to debate whether these marks were truly calendars, or something else entirely: decorations, games, even abstract art. But the possibility of timekeeping speaks to a deep truth. Ice Age people didn't merely react to winter, they anticipated it. They learned to see cold not just as threat but as rhythm, and to move in time with it. Now close your eyes and imagine enduring a winter night not through fire alone but through story and memory. The cave is dark except for faint coals. An elder speaks, voice low, weaving images of hunts past. You hear the scrape of tools, the sigh of children shifting in sleep. The story warms you, filling the cold silence with continuity. You are reminded that you are not the first to endure this, nor the last. Warmth stretches across time, binding past to present. A quirky speculation by some scholars. Perhaps Ice Age people spoke directly to the dead in these moments, calling upon ancestors as if they sat by the fire still. The bones of buried kin, painted with ochre, may have been seen not as loss but as presence, warmth of memory made physical. Imagine touching a bone, whispering thanks, believing that the ancestor's spirit shares its warmth with you. The sensory image is haunting yet comforting. A painted skull sits near the fire, ochre glowing in flicker, shadows dancing across hollow eyes. Far from terrifying, it feels protective. Children glance at it and smile, reassured. In death as in life, warmth is never wholly gone, it lingers, shared across generations. Experts remain divided on how literal such practices were. Were bones truly venerated, or simply remnants of burial traditions? The debates persist, but the theme is clear. Warmth stretched beyond one lifetime. The cold may take bodies, but it could not take memory. As you pull your cloak tighter, listening to the whisper of stories, you realize the depth of survival. It was not only the strength of arms or the sharpness of spears, not only the spark of flint or the heft of hides, it was patience, foresight, memory. The warmth of winter lay not just in fire's glow, but in the knowledge that tomorrow would come, that the herd would return, that others had endured before. The sensory blend of it all lulls you now, the faint crackle of coals, the hushed cadence of an elder's tale, the soft weight of fur on your shoulders, the images of animals glowing on the cave wall. You feel time itself bend around you, past and present mingling in one shared warmth. And so, as your eyes close, you carry the truth deep inside. The Ice Age was survived not only by hands and hides, but by memory itself. Each notch, each painting, each whispered word was another ember against the frost. Even now, across thousands of years, those embers still glow. You are warmed not only by the fire before you, but by the echo of fires long gone, their smoke curling into the endless night of history. The coals burn low, whispering as they collapse into ash, and your companions breathe softly in sleep. But even as you curl deeper beneath your cloak, warmth around you is never taken for granted. Every night in the Ice Age was a gamble. No matter how thick the hides, how strong the shelters, or how bright the fire, danger always lurked at the edges. The cold was not a single enemy, it was a host of threats, creeping from every angle. And so your ancestors learned to weave vigilance into survival, guarding warmth like a treasure too easily stolen. Archaeological traces reveal evidence of watchfires kept burning through the night. Some hearths show layers of ash suggesting continuous tending, embers banked and revived over days or weeks. It is widely accepted that someone always stayed awake, a sentinel beside the flames. Imagine the scene. The cave is quiet, filled with the steady breath of sleepers. Only one figure stirs, crouched by the fire, feeding it slivers of wood, turning logs, blowing softly on embers. Their eyes dart to the cave mouth, scanning the darkness. Every crack of ice outside, every howl of wind makes their muscles tense. For this single person, warmth is not comfort, it is duty. The sensory world of such a vigil is stark. The fire pops sharply in the silence, the glow painting your hands gold while the rest of the cave lies in shadow. Smoke curls lazily, stinging your eyes, clinging to your hair. Beyond the mouth, the night stretches empty, snow glowing faintly under the stars. You feel both small and immense, small against the vast cold, immense because for this moment, the fire depends on you. Specialists still disagree on how formal these vigils were. Some argue they were structured rotating watch duties passed from one person to another. Others believe they were informal, with the lightest sleeper tending instinctively. The truth is uncertain, but the logic is undeniable. A fire left alone in the night could die, and if the fire died, so too could the group. A quirky glimpse into practice comes from evidence of glowing embers carried in containers. Picture a carved horn, or a stone cup filled with smouldering coals, wrapped in hide to preserve heat. If the fire waned dangerously, a watcher could shake sparks back into life. The object itself became a talisman of survival, a vessel of potential warmth. Imagine clutching such a container, feeling its faint heat through fur, hearing the tiny hiss of coals shifting inside. Close your eyes and imagine being that watcher. Hours pass, the fire grows smaller, and your body aches from stillness. You fight sleep, blinking against heavy lids. The world feels narrowed to flame and darkness, to heat and cold. Yet each time you stir the fire, the crackle reassures you. You know your companions dream safely because you remain awake. Your heart swells with a strange pride. One ember against the endless dark, yet it is enough. Anthropologists point out that such vigilance shaped community dynamics. Trust mattered deeply. To hand someone the night's fire was to entrust them with life itself. A careless watcher, a sleeper who dozed off, could doom the entire band. In this sense, warmth became woven with responsibility, linking survival to character. One curious possibility: watchers may have used the quiet hours for prayer or reflection. Some ethnographic parallels suggest night watchers spoke softly to flames, asking spirits to protect sleepers. Imagine whispering to the coals, "Guard them, guard me," as sparks rise into the cave roof. The ritual calms you, staving off fatigue, turning duty into communion. The sensory strain of such vigils is memorable. Cold seeps into your legs from the stone floor. Eyes sting from smoke. Lips crack from dry air. Yet every flare of flame against the cave walls renews your will. The fire seems to pulse with your breath. Its glow a companion, its hiss an answer to silence. Scholars remain divided on how often bands truly succeeded in keeping fires alive every night. Was it constant, or did groups sometimes endure darkness when flames died? Evidence shows both possibilities. But the lesson endures. Guarding warmth was as much about persistence as invention. Now imagine the relief at dawn when others stir, and you finally stretch aching limbs. They smile drowsily, unaware of the hours you kept vigil. The fire still burns, embers glowing red. You pass responsibility back to the group, crawl into furs, and sleep at last. Warmth lingers not only in the cave but in the knowledge that you fulfilled your role. A quirky tidbit from some archaeological finds: charcoal from certain woods reveals preference for slow-burning logs, ones that smoulder through the night. Perhaps watchers learned which trees gave the best coals, guarding those pieces like treasure. Imagine setting aside a log all day, saving it for night watch, then laying it on the fire as your secret weapon against sleep. The psychological effect of night watches cannot be ignored. Alone with the fire, you come face to face with the immensity of winter, with predators unseen, with silence stretching eternal. Yet you also feel something profound, a bond with flame itself. You are its guardian, but also its student, learning patience, rhythm, endurance. Fire teaches you that survival is not always about action. Sometimes, it is about simply enduring, keeping a glow alive against nothingness. As you crawl back into sleep after your shift, soot streaking your fingers, you realize another truth. Warmth is not only shared, it is protected. Every ember that survives the night carries the weight of unseen hands that refuse to let it die. And so the fire you curl beside now is more than flame. It is trust made visible, vigilance made bright. You sigh, sinking into furs, soothed by the knowledge that someone else will tend the fire now. Outside, the cold still prowls, vast and eternal. But inside, human persistence glows steady, one ember at a time. The fire glows steadily, thanks to the unseen hands that guarded it through the long night. You stretch, joints popping, cloak rustling against fur bedding. Outside the cave mouth, the first light of dawn seeps through, faint and pale against the snow. Another day begins, and with it, another struggle to keep warmth alive. But survival in the Ice Age was never just about fires, shelters, or hides. It was about rhythm, about learning to live in harmony with the cycle of cold and thaw, hunger and abundance, darkness and light. Your ancestors did not fight winter blindly. They learned its tempo, stepped into its dance, and shaped their lives around it. Archaeologists studying migration patterns note evidence of repeated seasonal journeys, families moving like tides across valleys, mountains, and rivers. It is widely accepted that people adapted to the flow of the year, not resisting but anticipating. Imagine watching the sky as days shorten, shadows lengthen, and animals begin their migrations. You pack hides, gather tools, prepare to follow. Winter will not be kind if you linger. Movement itself becomes warmth, the act of leaving before cold tightens its grip. The sensory details of these migrations are stark. Boots crunch through snow that squeaks with cold dryness. Cloaks grow stiff with frost, each breath a plume of white. The air smells sharp, metallic, almost sterile, broken only by the musk of animals ahead. The world is vast and silent, but footsteps create rhythm, a steady drum of endurance. You feel warmth not from fire, but from movement, from muscles pumping blood, from the knowledge that each step carries you closer to shelter or herd. Scholars still debate how far these groups ranged. Some argue that people followed herds across hundreds of miles, living almost as nomads. Others believe smaller cycles dominated, returning to familiar caves, rotating between valleys, never straying too far. The debate lingers, but the evidence agrees. To survive, you had to move with the land, never against it. One quirky glimpse into this mobility comes from traces of temporary shelters, hastily built huts of hide and wood, left behind like footprints in earth. Picture stopping at dusk, snow blowing hard, and your band throwing together a lean-to of branches, hides stretched taut, fire kindled quickly. The shelter lasts only a night or two, then is abandoned as you move on. The land becomes dotted with ghosts of dwellings, like breadcrumbs leading through winter's maze. Now close your eyes and imagine such a night on the march. You huddle under a low hide roof, the wind howling outside, the fire small but steady. The air is cramped, smoky, heavy with breath. Yet laughter bubbles as food is shared, stories told. The shelter is crude, but warmth exists because it is enough for now. Tomorrow, you will move again, carrying embers, leaving bones and ashes behind. Anthropologists note that these migrations were not only physical but spiritual. Moving through landscapes repeatedly may have created sacred roots, places remembered and honored. A valley wasn't just a feeding ground, it was the valley where ancestors once found warmth, where a great hunt succeeded, where a cave painting was made. The land itself became a tapestry of memories, each return another thread woven in. One curious detail: Some bands may have left markers, arrangements of stones, carved bones, or even painted symbols to guide future journeys. Imagine stumbling upon a pile of antlers stacked deliberately, a sign that says, "This way, this is where warmth waits." These markers are like whispers from the past, survival instructions written in the language of bone and stone. The sensory power of such movement is profound. Hear the crunch of snow under dozens of feet, the grunt of sleds dragged across ice, the bark of dogs pulling loads. Smell the sweat of bodies bundled in furs, the faint sweetness of dried meat chewed along the way. Taste the snow you scoop into your mouth, cold and pure, easing thirst. See the horizon stretch endlessly, pale sun inching along, shadows long as spears. The march is grueling, but it is also steady, predictable, a rhythm your body learns. Experts continue to question whether these migrations were always voluntary. Sometimes herds failed, storms struck early, rivers froze too soon. Perhaps groups were forced to abandon carefully laid plans, driven into unfamiliar lands. The uncertainty was constant, but resilience was greater. People adjusted, always moving, always searching, never surrendering to the cold's finality. A quirky yet believable image emerges. Families traveling together with children carried in fur-lined slings, dogs burdened with packs, hunters dragging sleds. The caravan moves like a living river across the tundra. At night, fires dot the landscape, each one a brief star in the vast dark. From a distance, the march looks fragile. Up close, it feels unstoppable. The psychological effect of this rhythm cannot be overstated. To live in cycles, to know you will leave, return, leave again, creates a sense of belonging to movement itself. Home is not one cave or hut. It is the path, the knowledge of where warmth lies hidden across seasons. You belong not to one place, but to the dance of winter itself. Now imagine the return after months away. Snow crunches differently here, softer, familiar. The cave appears in the distance, its entrance dark and wide. Inside, soot still clings to walls. Bones from past meals lie scattered. You kneel, relight the hearth, and warmth returns as if it had never left. The cycle is complete, and you know it will repeat again and again, each winter both familiar and new. Some anthropologists argue that this rhythm of migration shaped human identity itself. The very idea of time, of future planning, of memory, grew from the need to move with seasons. Others push back, suggesting culture would have blossomed regardless. The dispute continues, but one thing is certain: rhythm was survival. Without it, warmth would flicker and die. The sensory blend of cycle is soothing. The crunch of snow under boots, the flicker of fire in familiar caves, the taste of stored marrow on return, the laughter of children recognizing old shelters. Each element reinforces the same truth. Survival is not chaos but pattern, not frantic scrambling but practiced return. As you pull your cloak tighter tonight, drifting into slumber, you realize what your ancestors discovered. Warmth is not simply made, it is rehearsed. It is the rhythm of departure and return, of fire lit and fire revived, of herds followed and herds awaited. You breathe deeply, soothed by that certainty, warmed by the knowledge that even winter bows to pattern. And so you sleep, the cycle continuing, footsteps echoing across frozen plains, embers carried across time, warmth waiting at every return. The cave walls still glow faintly with soot, handprints, and the painted silhouettes of beasts. Outside, snow drifts steadily, piling in silence. But within the shelter, the fire burns on, tended with patience, fed with bone and wood alike. You lie back in your cloak, boots stuffed with dried grass, belly filled with marrow, and you realize something. This is the culmination of everything your ancestors learned. From fire circles to snow domes, from caches to cloaks, from shared vigils to painted walls, the story of warmth is not one invention but a weaving of many threads. Each thread fragile on its own, yet braided together into something strong enough to endure an age of ice. Archaeological traces from across the world whisper the same lesson. Survival was a mosaic, not a single masterpiece. It is widely agreed that communities combined techniques: bone huts when wood was scarce, furs layered thick when firewood ran low, snow shelters when storms swept plains, caches when game disappeared. No single method was enough. Warmth was improvisation, built fresh each day from whatever the land gave. Imagine walking across frozen steppe, eyes scanning instinctively. This branch could be fuel, that patch of moss could be tinder, those tracks could lead to food. The mind itself became a furnace, burning with constant creativity. The sensory world of this mosaic is vivid, the crackle of dung igniting when wood is gone, the creak of sinew thread stitches tugged tight on a fur hood, the smell of fat lamps smouldering through long nights, the taste of dried berries softened in snow, the sight of glowing ochre on walls, red as fire itself. Survival meant engaging every sense, every detail, turning the harshest environment into an uneasy ally. Specialists still debate what drove this ingenuity most: climate pressure, animal scarcity, or social bonds. Was survival forced by the cold alone, or by the constant uncertainty of Ice Age landscapes? Did humans innovate because storms threatened, or because they sought comfort even when survival was already secured? The arguments swirl, but the outcome remains clear. Ingenuity itself became warmth. One quirky glimpse of this truth comes from archaeological evidence of musical instruments: bone flutes, carved with holes, played in caves thick with smoke. Music is no fuel, no cloak, no shelter. Yet imagine lying beneath hides, while wind screams outside, listening to a tune rise soft and steady, its notes weaving through fire crackle. That music warms in another way, a heat that touches spirit instead of skin. Humans, even surrounded by frost, refused to live in silence. They filled winter with song. Now close your eyes and imagine the full picture of Ice Age survival. Fire pits glowing red within rings of stones, cloaks stitched with beads and ochre, layered thick with moss and hide, shelters rising from bone and snow alike, their walls glowing faintly in fat lamp light, children swaddled in fur bags, elders chanting stories, hunters tending caches buried beneath turf. Every act hums with the same theme: keep the cold at bay, keep life within. Warmth is not just heat, it is ritual, memory, innovation, and meaning. Anthropologists suggest that this layering of strategies did more than preserve bodies. It shaped the human spirit. The patience of watching embers at night became discipline. The planning of caches became foresight. The painting of walls became imagination. The sharing of hides and food became culture. The Ice Age did not merely test humanity, it forged humanity. One unusual interpretation of cave art claims some animals were drawn with multiple legs to mimic movement in firelight. Imagine watching shadows ripple, the herd galloping across stone, and feeling that warmth wasn't just survival but storytelling. Scholars may argue endlessly whether such depictions were mystical, practical, or playful. But you sense the truth. Humans needed not only to survive, but to feel alive. That too was a kind of warmth. The sensory echo of this final insight is overwhelming. The heat of fire against your cheeks, the musk of hides heavy on your shoulders, the rhythm of voices chanting, the flicker of beasts painted above, the faint tang of smoke in your lungs. All of it forms a blanket thicker than any fur, warmer than any ember. It is the blanket of human persistence, draped over you even now. Experts remain divided on whether Ice Age humans lived in constant fear or in steady adaptation. Some see a world of desperate struggle, others a world of resilience and routine. The truth may be both fear and resilience intertwined, each driving the other. What cannot be doubted is the outcome. People endured. Warmth, however fragile, was always rekindled. As you drift in your imagination through the smoky cave, listening to companions breathe, you feel the weight of that endurance. Tens of thousands of years stretch between you and them, yet the ember they carried has not gone out. It glows in every fire you light today, every blanket you pull tight, every home you build against winter. You are warmed not only by your own fire, but by theirs, still burning through time. Now the storm outside softens. The cave feels smaller, gentler. You exhale, your breath misting in the firelight. Cloak heavy, body weary. You let your eyes close, carrying with you the truth of your ancestors' wisdom. The cold was vast, but warmth was clever, communal, persistent. And in that persistence, humanity not only endured, it became itself. And now, dear listener, as the final sparks fade and the long story of warmth in the Ice Age comes to rest, let yourself soften too. The storms of that distant world may rage in your imagination, but here, in this moment, you are safe, cocooned in your own quiet shelter. The struggles of mammoth hunts, of fires coaxed from stone, of caves filled with smoke and song, those belong to another time. They have carried you far tonight, but their work is done. Let your breath grow slower. Inhale gently, as if pulling in the faint scent of smoke from an ancient hearth. Exhale steadily, like releasing the weight of a heavy fur cloak. Feel the quiet warmth around you now, not the desperate heat of survival, but the soft comfort of being held by your bed, your blankets, your present life. The past may be cold, but the memory of it glows warmly inside you, a reminder of how deeply human beings have always sought safety and rest. Imagine the painted walls fading into darkness, the herds drifting into silence, the fire dwindling into gentle ash. The cave grows still, and so does your mind. Thoughts settle like snowflakes falling, one by one, until everything lies calm and unbroken. You are not trudging through frost anymore. You are simply lying here, sheltered, wrapped in quiet. The cold has no claim on you now. Only warmth remains steady, soothing, timeless. So, let yourself drift. Let sleep come as softly as embers dimming, as naturally as breath in winter air. You are safe, you are warm, you are carried. Sweet dreams.